reason I have two?
Yeah, he just,
They shouldn't be the
he
same.
just
I
said
have
we're,
two the same.
okay.
Oh, they're different years.
I have two the same.
There's
You
two
can share
different years.
mine.
There's
I'll
two
share-
different.
I'll
I'll
share
share
two
yours.
different
He's got
years.
two of the same
I
for some
literally have
reason.
I have more.
Are we, I guess we're on?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get into the information that I provided to you. There's gonna be a document for the senior center. What we try to do is give you levy support for a number of years going back, just so you have that information. And then I know there were some questions, pertaining to the CIP and some of the projects that the Parks Board had recommended for 2020 and 21. So I gave you those two documents as well. So we'll get into those when appropriate. So I guess what I'm hearing is we'll go through wherever they fall in our budget book. So page 87 is the Parks budget. And old age is set in, so I have glasses now, so. What I'll do is I want to try to touch on some of our KPIs and some of our significant accomplishments. And then if there's questions, obviously our managers are all here to address those as well. But in the park side of things, our KPIs, and you'll see this through the most of our divisions, because as we sat down with the committee that was putting together KPIs, we looked at all of our divisions and really saw the number of volunteers, donation, sponsorship grants that each of our divisions apply for or rely on in our budgets. And we looked at that as a way that we're really saving tax levy support by all of our department divisions. So we really focused a lot on that. And I hope you'll see a lot of that as we go through each individual division. The parks in itself, as you take a look, as far as donations and grants go, the majority of those, well, quarter one, obviously, at the $705,000. That includes the $600,000 donation from Oshkosh Corporation for the trail construction. But then you'll see it drops down. A lot of those donations will be for our memorial bench program. That's about $1,500 each, depending on if we have to have concrete added or not, which most of them do. So majority of those donations will be for our bench program. But then you take a look at the volunteer hours, and a lot of that comes in support of community groups, businesses, whatever it may be, helping us on park cleanups, a lot of trail cleanups that we work with them on. And the going rate on the volunteer rate or hour, if you've had an hourly rate to figure, is $25.43. So when you start taking a look at how that rate actually translates into dollars saved, I think you're going to see some pretty good savings for the city. So as far as the budget itself goes, we can talk about the enhancement that is in there for parks. When we take a look at that, Bill and Chad put together some information, and they can help explain some of the reasons for it. But we are really we're really falling behind the eight ball, I would like to say, on routine maintenance. A lot of it has to do with our availability for seasonal staff. We're finding that because of the economy, it's tougher and tougher to hire seasonal staff, which then our full-time staff have to pick up that additional, and it puts our projects behind. It puts projects that we had hoped to do on a list that when we get to. So it's been very difficult the last couple of years. What we've tried to do is put together we went back to 2008 to 2019, our full-time equivalents for parks, cemetery, what we call landscape operations, which is cemetery, Riverside Cemetery, was 24.5 FTE back in 2008. 2019, we're at 25.64. So you can see for the last 12 years, we really haven't added staff. And we've added a number of acreage to the city. As far as parks, we're looking at an increase in park acreage of approximately 75 acres. Approximately 75 acres, with 70 of that being Lakeshore Park. We've added two small neighborhood parks with some recent developments, one on Ripple Avenue and then another Pickard Estates, which is out on 9th Avenue, so another 5 acres roughly. So we've added about 75 acres. As you know, we're currently going through the process of doing the Lakeshore Park Master Plan. So what we've been doing up until this point is basically mowing areas that we could get to. We do know that as we start to develop it next year and there's amenities out there, the staff time is going to increase. We also know that due to the construction, we haven't been able to mow a lot of the site out there. So the hours we're putting in there are not near what we're going to be needing once we get into next year and once we try to make sure the site is looking presentable. As far as trails and Riverwalk goes, everybody is hopefully aware, but the Riverwalk, we've added about 3.5 miles. That, when it is developed, is turned over to our department for maintenance. That includes the trails, the docks, landscape maintenance, snow removal, vandalism repairs. Vandalism has been gotten worse the last couple of years, and that's something I think we're going to try to work with Russ and Jennifer on, is doing a better tracking job of vandalism, maybe getting a line item for that, because we're seeing vandalism on a weekly basis in most of our parks. So it's something that our staff spends a lot of time on. The Lakeshore Park Trail that's currently being developed is another 3/4 miles. So we're up to almost 4.5 miles of additional trail. New park restrooms that we've added over the last 8 to 10 years at Stevens Park, Mary Jewel, the Boatworks site, Menomonee Park Zoo, the additional full-time exhibits that we added, the Otter exhibit and the Eagle exhibit, which is currently under construction. Special events, as most of you know, a lot of the events happen in the parks. Even though our staff may not be directly involved in those, there is additional cleanup and setup, which takes away a lot of our staff time. Another project was the William Waters Plaza and the additional plantings that will be down there. That falls back on Bill Sturm and the landscape operations staff. And then we look at the number of roundabouts. There's, out of the 13 roundabouts, 12 of those are maintained by our staff. We've got about 15 boulevard traffic islands that we maintain with plantings, about 12 flower beds throughout the city. The new gateway signage, the 3 signs that were added, had landscape added around those, is our department's responsibility. And then there's the various landscape beds throughout the parks. Some of the issues that Bill is seeing more and will continue to see is the emerald ash borer has gotten really bad the last year. It exploded quite heavily on the west side. Talking with Bill today, we're looking at probably removal of about 70 trees just due to emerald ash borer this year, and there's more that need to be coming down. It's not just the removal of those, but it's also sending staff out to stump grind, backfill with soil, and then seed those areas. So those are, the things that we put together. I feel Bill and Chad are, they're barely keeping their head above water at this point. I know we've talked with the council in past years about some additional staff needed, but with the additional Lakeshore coming up and all the things that we really feel routine maintenance we're not getting to, it's really something we need to look at. And then you throw the economy in there, and being able to get qualified, reliable seasonal staff has been very difficult.
So it looks like, I just had a quick question. You have 3 on your current projected seasonal haul?
Which page are you on? I'm sorry, Jake.
88. That's 2.93.
2.93, that's seasonal FTE,
So that's
correct.
like the hiring on help during the summertime?
And actually, what we try to do is, we've been successful the last 2 years, I would say, with getting some retired individuals. So we're able to get them in early in April. We really work with them because some of the retired people don't want to work 40 hours. We get as much as we can out of them throughout the summer, and then they're also reliable for us in the fall when we lose our college and other seasonal staff. So it's really April until, say, end of October, almost, depending how far our budget can spread. But that is the approximate 2.93.
But you'd said earlier that we have a hard time recruiting seasonal help?
Yes.
That's obviously because some of the businesses are paying a little more. What's our hiring rate?
It'll depend. In our maintenance area, I think we're at about $10 an hour roughly, and it's about a 25-cent increase each year they come back.
That's
But it's
weekends, but what about the operation, like the amusement and the pool and that?
those managers. I'll start with the manager staff because we have some managers at the pool and then at our amusement and concession areas in the Leach. Those are at about $13 an hour. But our concessions and others, I believe we bumped those up to about $8.50 or $9 an hour. Just around $9 an hour for those.
I understand we have a budget, but at the same time, I mean, some of these kids, high school kids, can go work and make almost twice as much.
Yeah, you can go to any fast food and make $10, $10 to $11, I think.
Air conditioned.
Yeah. So that's a big part of it too. And so we see that, with a seasonal staff, and we talk about this with Russ and Mark and HR, that once you continue to increase that seasonal staff, you're bumping up against some of our lower pay grades in our full-time staff. So it's really a trickle effect upward.
That's full-time all year round. compared to just prime time.
Correct.
Maybe a little extra.
Yeah. So it's, it's been an issue, and I'm sure anybody that operates a business, and you see a lot of businesses closing certain days of the weeks because they can't make it do, and we've had to adjust our hours at the zoo and some other areas, and in the past at the pool because we couldn't get enough lifeguard staff. So
Had to close up early in the season, haven't we?
yeah, this year we were actually pretty good, and I'll share that a little bit in the pool budget when we get there. But between Chad and some of the staff through the recreation department, they had to add some incentives. We had to pay for some of the lifeguards to go in and get trained. It was an added incentive for them, but it was a cost to us. And that's something at the end, you'll see that, what we were charged from the recreation department, it was escalated because of that. But that was the only way we really felt we could get staff in there to staff the pool at this point. So I wanted to get right into the budget enhancement, I guess, because it's a big part of what we're asking for in the general parks. And Russ and Russ had an idea on how we can potentially fund this over time. And one thing that Russ is looking at is, it combines some of our other budgets, but our revenue facilities budget, which is our 255, and we'll touch on later. But what we've done this year to eliminate the golf course budget, the previous golf course budget, is Russ is suggesting we put those expenses into our 255 account. And what that allows us to do is we're really starting out in the negative, but Russ and Mark are hoping that every year a certain portion of the operating budget can be put into the 255 to eventually help pay off those positions and have less effect on expenditure restraint. Correct, Russ?
Exactly.
Where's the 255?
I will let you know.
Yeah, I have the page number right here. It's page 177. No, 172. I can't read either. I need to get
Starts on 172.
Always a positive from the finance guy that can't read.
No, I just didn't tilt my head in the right direction.
And
I had to have the bifocal portion kick in.
Aging workforce. He said it.
So anyways, what ended up happening in looking at it, and we'll be coming to city council for the formal action, but basically formally closing out the golf course fund, and taking that proceeds and rolling it into the park revenues, special revenue fund. Again, special revenues, we can account for them. There is some tax support, but we're trying to, on this one, we're really trying to come in and transfer money into this. So this particular one, we don't have tax levy going to right now.
currently, correct.
So what we're going to do is, because of the cost for maintaining the Lakeshore Park and those things, the operational costs will be in the special revenue fund. And we're proposing that $50,000 would be transferred in from the general fund or from taxes to help cover the expenses. It's not covering all of it, but we'll gradually increase that so we don't have a huge hit in the first year. So in 2021, we're probably looking at something more than that, making a gradual increase to it. If city council wants to consider the enhancement for additional labor to help with parks, we would recommend that you put it into this special revenue fund, the 255 fund, and then we'll slowly increase our contributions into that until we get it fully funded.
And you can see it starts on a page of 178 and then 179. That's really the golf course operating budget that was in the golf course fund this year.
So, did I understand you were saying something about taking revenue from left over from the golf course, putting it in here, when I thought we had talked about that going in towards what was needed with Lakeshore Park? Did I misunderstand what you were saying about taking?
We could still put some in there for the actual park improvements, but also, there were still some operational expenses that were going into that golf course fund, and we're moving that into the special revenue fund.
But the proceeds from the golf course, I think, is the mayor's asking, would
Right.
still go towards the development of the park.
Right.
Over time, we have to get support to maintain the golf course. I mean, it's effectively a new public park. And I think,
But we had that before.
No, we had a little, the golf course was getting supported very, very little by the general fund operating costs. The general fund was paying for all the capital costs. That was sort of the myth
They're
of.
like 800,000 or something like that in there. and
Oh,
then-
it was actually more than that, because Finance Director Stino and I, our first collective year here, we saw an opportunity to pay off a loan that would help us on expenditure restraint. So we took advantage of it, and we paid off the golf course loan, made it look like the golf course had paid it off. The golf course hadn't paid it off. It was Peggy and I sitting in a room saying,
Right.
this is good
Yeah.
for us collectively, so we just did it that way. So it artificially lowered the debt from $1.5 million down to 800,000. I think the golf course had paid off over,
$1.6 million, yeah.
over 15 years, no, I shouldn't say that, over about 10 years, the golf course had paid off about $25,000.
So, Mr. Mauer, in the maintenance anticipation with all those extra 70 acres, not that they're extra, because it's really less than what the golf course was. I guess my question is, it looks like some of the plans that are made for that space is more natural and unmanicured, not unmaintained, but
Low
less-
maintenance.
Lower maintenance. Is there any kind of quantification as to what that looks like dollar-wise as opposed to the maintenance for the golf course? So I guess what I'm saying is, I know we have kind of the bifurcated active space and the other more natural. Is it a wash? Is it more costly for maintenance, less costly?
I think we're too early at this point because the Parks Board just a week ago actually saw the concept plan.
Sure.
And still it has to go to the Plan Commission and to the Common Council.
Right.
So until we have that definite plan of what's going to be there.
Yeah.
We're talking about, the trails aren't high maintenance, but there's crack filling, there's other things down the road that we need to do. Even though it might be low maintenance, and Bill can speak to this, it's not no maintenance.
Right.
And it takes at least 3 years before you start to see some of that reduced maintenance. So there's maintenance, there's cost. There may not be as big a cost with fertilizing and weeding because we don't do that majority in our parks. But then we're still going to have that mowing outside of those areas so it's hard for me to quantify at this point. I
Sure.
can let you know though, taking a look at the old golf course budget when it was a golf course, they had 3.5 full-time equivalents for grounds maintenance alone. And then they had Steve Dobish, who a portion of his time, he was out on mowers and doing other things too. So say another half of Steve's time was added in there. There were approximately 4 full-time equivalents maintaining the golf course. So not saying it's going to be 4, but when we originally said the golf course was going to be a community park, Chad and I sat down and said, we're going to need at least 2 full-time just to maintain the mowing and weeding and things that need to go on there.
And was part of that going to be taken care of by Oshkosh Corporation? There was like a transition buffer area, I thought.
Just
There
out-
is a portion, but
right out in front of their building down to the water's edge, they're responsible for.
Okay.
And that's what they agreed to keep
But
that
not any of the
maintained.
trail itself,
Correct. They donated the $600,000 towards the
Sure.
construction, but not the maintenance.
capital, okay.
Correct. So I'm sorry we're jumping around, but it really affects a number of different budgets, so I'm happy to, if there's anything specifically in parks, otherwise what we would do is continue through the budget book on the page 91, which is
Is
forestry.
that Oaks Trail you had listed on here? Menomonee Park's Oaks Trail section is that?
That's
That
what we
was the
call a
road.
horseshoe up on the north end,
Okay.
and that was reconstructed. We worked with the streets department to do that. That was completed this summer.
Is there, somewhere in the works for next year, that section of the, trail that goes towards Ames Point? I think the Bike and Ped Committee were concerned about the, continually being underwater and,
That's actually from, I would say, from Oaks Trail south down towards the Nevada Street Pump Station, and that goes to the CIP items that I provided you for 2020 and
okay,
21.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
So we can get to that
Yep.
if you want to wait till the CIP.
Yep.
Yes. Anything else, Parks General Fund? If not, like I said, forestry is the next division starting on page 91. This one is a pretty static budget. I will say that, again, taking a look at the KPIs, and it's not completely reflected here, but Bill worked very closely with planning staff and the neighborhood associations to get a number of large grants this year for some additional tree plantings. If you take a look again at sponsorships, grants, and donations, just showing up here at this point is about $7,000. That will increase, but it's going to be shown in another budget, because again, what we're trying to do is remove some of those operating costs out of the general fund to not affect the expenditure restraint again. So we worked on removing that and getting into our street tree, memorial tree fund. But Bill and like I said, they've been working closely with planning on a number of different projects. 60 to 70 trees, like I said, already have been removed this year due to emerald ash borer. So his staff has been very busy with that. With how that affects our division as a whole, between Bill and Chad, they've really done a good job of looking at us as the Parks Department. And if Bill's got a priority at the cemetery and we need to send staff over there to get things done, Chad knows it's time to get things looking good for Memorial Day or whatever it might be. But at the same time, Bill understands when it's opening week for the pool, we may have to pull 2 or 3 of your staff to come help us there. So they've done a real good job at doing that. But we're still losing ground because we've got these projects, the emerald ash, that's really biting into us right now, where Bill has to focus on that so he can't afford to share staff, and Chad is, losing ground on some of the routine maintenance things. So it comes full circle in all our divisions. Another thing that I think that we're very proud of the last couple of years is Bill and his staff put together a street tree pruning cycle. So every winter they are getting through at least a fifth of the city trees. They broke it down into the city into fifths. So they, when they get out pruning, they concentrate on that area. And if we get a call with over the next couple months and somebody's in a different zone of the city, we can look at it. Bill will look at it. If it's not a high priority safety or a nuisance, we can say that tree is planned for pruning next winter or whatever it might be. If it's a nuisance or a safety issue, we can send staff out and deal with it. But it's a little more proactive than instead of sending staff across the city. So that's something that they've really concentrated on, and probably 1,800 to 2,000 trees a winter, I think is.
Yeah, most of the zones are anywhere from 1,800 to 2,000, so. Bill, real quick, just give everybody an idea of how many ash trees you take down on a normal year versus what you're looking at doing now with the problem.
Well, we haven't had to remove a lot of ash over, past 10 years. Our initial inventory that I had done 15 years ago had us at about 17% of our inventory was ash. That would include parks and street trees. With our emerald ash borer situation coming up, we stopped planting ash at that time, and then embarked on a treatment program where we have identified trees that are worth saving, primarily those that have been in good structural condition. And so we have been treating, we have about 600 under treatment currently, which not only preserves the tree, but it also helps us kind of hold back on what we had expected would be, an onslaught of emerald ash borer throughout the community. So essentially, we're not going to lose everything all at once, so we can do more of a staged approach for removals. But a lot of the green ash that we had out there, we have not been treating, just because we've also had structural issues or consistent storm damage with them anyway. So we just decided rather to go through, the expense of treating some of those large green ash, that we would just let them go and replace with other species. So this past winter, as Ray mentioned earlier, we had a lot of situations where we have to remove trees in a short time frame. So we have quite a few yet to go here this year, and I expect next year will be probably substantial as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just to touch on some of the KPIs in Bill's landscape ops sections. Again, taking a look at some of the donations and grants that were received, but then looking again at the volunteer hours. Most of these hours, I would say, are spent up on the planting project up at Miller's Bay. That Bill has a good working relationship with Michelle Bogdan and her staff, volunteers, I would say, and doing some routine maintenance over there. So that, again, the number of hours, primarily during the summer months at this one, but that's the majority of those hours as well. Otherwise, the budget is pretty static, I guess, not increasing any staff in this area or any major expenditures.
One additional item I'd like to add to that too is we have been receiving some pretty nice grants over the past year or so. We have over $61,000 that we have, some of it completed, some will be in 2020 work, but we had some nice opportunities to do additional tree planting throughout the city on primarily terraces, and which has helped us mitigate a little bit of the ash removals, and also we're working closely with planning staff on doing some plantings in some of the newly formed neighborhood associations. So that's a kind of a nice kickoff for some of the associations to have us come in and try to replant some of their areas that are deficient. So,
And I think Russ pointed out yesterday, those are in a separate fund because of expenditure restraint. We keep them out of this fund because otherwise that would spike the expenditures in this. So we track those separately.
If you wanna-
any of those grants.
If you look at page 200 and 201, that actually shows the street tree memorial program, and you'll see that again, most of those are grant and aids. So we're looking
There's your
at
grants.
Okay, so here's a question. With our
Same fund.
street sweeping and leaf collection, how is it that forestry didn't end up with that as part of their budget as opposed to the streets?
they have most likely the equipment and more staffing than we do, and it's
And
typically
it's
done there.
partially funded by the stormwater fee, which some of the businesses take issue with that, but it's because it does, if you don't clean them up, they end up in the storm sewer.
Right,
So
exactly.
we get about half the program gets funded by the stormwater utility, the remainder gets funded by general fund.
So I
I've always said we're on the production end of the league.
Exactly. So that's the other question about the diversity and the planting then, I guess. I'm assuming there's a reason why we wouldn't be just planting all evergreen, non-deciduous, leaf shedding type trees, that we need a variety. And so that's some of the questions that have come up out of the community is, rather than paying for more street trees or terrace trees that are producing more of the leaf litter, I guess, if you will, is there a biodiversity question answered there?
All of our plantings within the last, I'd say, 8 years have been of diverse species, just because of our awareness of situations like past situations like Dutch elm disease, now emerald ash borer. So rather than have monoculture, we are mixing up a variety of different species, and many of them we have not worked with in the past. So we're trying to mix it up quite a bit so that we could stem any potential insect or disease problem that might be coming down in the future. We do not use evergreens on terraces for visibility issues, but we do use them out in the parks, of course. So our plantings are very diverse. A lot of folks prefer to have, trees that they're familiar with. Maples are a common one that everybody wants, but there too we have to worry about potential future infestations of Asian longhorn beetle, which is now in the Chicago area, which dines on maples predominantly. So we do like to try to mix up the species, so that we aren't going to lose whole batches that we are currently and as we had in the past.
I have one question. Excuse me. So, just a budget-related one. Line item, where am I? Oh, no, it zeroes out. But 6401 in the Tree Street Memorial.
Yep.
I assume that zeroes out from the,
Yeah, if you take a look at the grant and aid up on top,
yeah,
that's really the contractor that Bill works with for the tree plantings and the tree stock.
okay. Got it. And so So a contractor, so is that like a local nursery or a regional nursery?
A lot of the grant projects, we try to do some in-house that, we have the capability of. Most of our requests are done by our staff. But when we have a larger project that is either funded by one of these grant organizations, we try to include enough so that we can actually have a contractor come in. So we'll put it out as an RFP, and generally speaking, local contractors will show up, and we have to vet those to make sure that they're going to be, number one, provide us a 2-year guarantee on the nursery stock for survivability, and also workmanship. And the stock is also rated so that we make sure that we're getting quality stock in from these vendors. So we have a pretty good working relationship with several different companies in the valley. We're also good with the citizens, so that when they get approached out on the street, they're friendly and informative and that sort of thing too. Because when we're doing these big projects, taking root was a big one where we wanted to make sure that the folks out there doing the installation were cognizant of the importance of the project and make sure that the citizens are on board and happy with the results.
Nothing else for forestry or the Memorial Tree Program? Then the Senior Center is on page 114 and 15.
While you're going there, just a quick maybe comment. You touched on it at the beginning of the parks budget. As we see economic development and improvements to our waterways and the trails along our waterways, you touched about the amount of roundabouts we have. We acquired several from the county not that long ago. I think Witzel and I don't know if it's
The medians,
the
on
medians,
44.
correct. We acquired those. We've got several boulevards. We continue to we hear talk of that Oshkosh Ave improvements where is that going to be a boulevard or something like that. Those are good things. However, I see unfunded liabilities. I see an unfunded mandate that keeps getting placed on the parks budget every time I hear one of those coming through. And as well as the Riverwalk. Excellent things that we're doing along the water, but every time we're doing that, at no part in the council discussion up there is any part of, well, by the way, we're going to need to fund X amount of dollars going forward to make sure we sustain the dollars that we're putting into this. I'd personally like to see something that when we're seeing some of these trail improvements coming to us, when we see a Riverwalk budget and a plan that comes to us, I'd like to see Parks looped in on that process that says, if we're going to do this, Parks is going to need to support this with X amount of time. And here's what that cost is. Whether or not we're actually going to budget for it at that time or not, but so that council cannot say, we didn't know about it. Because there's a significant amount of unfunded liability that continues to get passed on to parks.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting right on it. I think we're to that point now where we haven't been adding those resources for us. And the Riverwalk is a perfect example. We know that the community loves it, the citizens love it, we want to expand it. Those light bollards are about $1,500 a piece. And we're 10 years in from our first section at Riverside Park, and we need to start planning. We're replacing them, but they're coming out of my budget. And working with Scooter, we're finding that the existing ones are no longer manufactured, so we're spending potentially extra dollars on getting a new model. But you're exactly correct, and I think that's why we're here now, saying we haven't been able to do that. And Bill and I and Chad and I have had the discussion just with William Waters Plaza. Looks great. It's going to look better, but Bill and his staff are going to be tasked with maintaining those shrub beds. And so Bill and I had that discussion. I said, how much staff time is this going to cost you? And I think that's something we have to bring forward at each of these new.
So as we continue to do those economic development programs that they should be a part of that process, at least on an ancillary and an outside front that says, all right, that's fine. Here's some extra things that you need to just take into account in the grand scheme of things.
I think it's incumbent upon staff when we're doing something to accept these things to put that in the fiscal impact section of the staff.
Yeah, because
Just
a
to let
lot
them
of
know.
times we don't say there's any fiscal impact, but
There
I was
is.
under the impression that William Waters Plaza was being maintained by the neighborhood group.
Well, they have been assisting us through that project. There's things, though, that we need to go in there and take care of, too. I mean, we have to oversee all the projects that neighborhood associations are working with us on, just to make sure that the level of quality is good. That particular neighborhood association has been really awesome, so we have high expectations that they'll
So how much
participate.
are you guys doing, and how much is the neighborhood association doing on that? Because I know they also work on litter pickup along Riverside Park, and that's becoming a little bit unsustainable as some of their members are aging and unable to lift heavy garbage bags out of.
Yeah, we communicate quite a bit. We did the initial installation, and then the neighborhood association did a lot of the annual plantings there this year. We have to have somebody go in there and water them. We have a water route that we cover all our flower beds, so our staff is still involved. We tend to design those to be maintenance friendly anyway, but you know, it's not that there's a significant amount of time there on that one site, but all total with all the
Right.
additions we have, it has been a substantial drain on our staff because we essentially have two individuals who are working all the time on just landscape maintenance, and which leaves us two people who could only work on forestry items, which is tree removals and plantings and things like that. So we do get stretched very thin, just trying to keep roundabouts, traffic islands, and all those items weed-free and looking good. So it's tough, you know, but, you know, I think, you know, we just, you know, as much as we try to, you know, take the best care of everything, it gets to be difficult.
Yeah, and I think I talk about this all the time. The forced labor that we're just gets dumped on us with the roundabouts. I mean, how many roundabouts did the state dump on us, Ray? I mean,
13 out of 14, I believe.
so they come in, they build a roundabout, and then they walk away from the project, and we've got to maintain them forever. I mean, and you know, miles of trail and all this other stuff. I mean, Bob and I sit on the Parks Board, and these guys are buried, especially in a year like this. I mean, half the year they spend underwater. So, I mean, I can't imagine what things are going to look like in the spring, you know, just to play catch up. And we got to really start thinking about this more proactively. It's just turning into it's turning into a maintenance nightmare, and I see our quality going down. I do, and it's not because of anybody's fault. It's just we don't have the bodies.
Perfect segue.
Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move on into Senior Center. And this one, if you take a look at page 114, there's not KPIs shown here, but they are on Gene's, the 231 account, which we'll get into next, the 146 page. But this account is really a programming account, we call it. It gives Gene and her staff the flexibility to try new, I'm sorry, page 114.
You said it. I just wasn't listening. Thank you.
So this one is not subsidized by taxes. This is really I want to call it a self-funded program, but it gives, again, Jean and her staff, if a new program wants to be tried, they establish a fee that's going to cover the cost or more to be allowed to try to do that. So we'll touch on the KPIs shortly, but Jean is here to talk about anything you might have questions on. One thing that you'll see the Senior Center is going to be focusing more heavily on is the fitness side of things. We've started to do that since Jean has been here because we've seen that's the trend. That's people are living longer. They want to work out and they want to be able to have low-cost workout areas. We've been able to work with a lot of in-house staff, whether it's with facility staff, electric staff, our park staff, to really expand on and improve the fitness facilities over there. If you have not been there, I would encourage you to take a look at them. The seniors love it. Jean's background is heavy in fitness, coming from the YMCA, but we're seeing that 51% of the people that walk through the Senior Center doors are there for workout and fitness programs. So we're really going to be concentrating there. And it's scattered across the number of budgets, but we worked over the last 6 months or so working on a reorganization that involves Senior Center and our Leach Amphitheater, actually. We know that we need a full-time fitness coordinator at the Senior Center. We had a position that was half-time. That individual resigned back in April. to take a full-time position. And we had been getting contacted from a number of customers and citizens saying, we really need to step up the fitness programs. So unfortunately, Jean has been teaching fitness programs since April. Her HRA score is great this year for the city for premiums, but we can't have our division manager teaching fitness programs 5 days a week. So we worked with HR and Mark and Russ to do a reorganization to get that full-time fitness position. You'll see that in the senior center when we get into that budget. We're able to do that at pretty much a cost neutral. What we did was, and again, going across budgets because we were trying to be creative, at our Leach facility, we were having trouble finding a dependable Leach manager, somebody that could be there when we needed them on different hours, evenings, weekends. And we had a position at the senior center, Evan Bremberger, who's an activities coordinator, who focuses on special events and programming. So what we're able to do is shift a portion of Evan's time or hours that he'll spend during the summer months, April through August roughly, and budget that in the Leach program, giving Jean a little flexibility and some dollars in her budget to add into that fitness coordinator position that was seasonal, basically, or half-time, I should say. So it helped us, it helped Chad and Jenny at the Leach because we have a full-time person there for those 5 months or whatever it is, and we have that individual then in the off-season for some help planning and other things while he's at the senior center. So most of Evan's time, again, April into September, what primarily concentrated at the Leach, and outside of that, Gene will then be utilizing more of his services, again, for his routine business at the senior center and programming and special events. We did some other shifting of duties and as part of that reorganization. So I think it's going to be beneficial, and we're focusing in an area that, again, 51% of our customers are coming there for.
So I noticed a trend with the KPIs for parks, grocery, senior center, focusing more on donation and volunteer hours, which is obviously a part of the operations, but I guess maybe I'm kind of surprised that we aren't seeing more KPIs that are tied to the actual services and people served.
We do have those. We do track that. Again, it's just, as you see here and what's on the dashboard for the council, we were asked to pick out 3 or 4 of those. So we do track. Jenny tracks attendance. Jean tracks. She has that information that we can share.
So I guess my question is, what shapes your choice of those in terms of priority to show?
As far as what we're showing, because this was our first real kick at the KPIs, I would say, when we sat down, all of our divisions sat down and said, all right, what stands out? Because we tried to pick something that each division will report on, but then it reports out on the park side. So it was really a pyramid, basically. And as we sat there, we said, we rely on volunteers so heavily, and you're seeing that. We rely on those donations and grants. So we said, that's going to be our first start. We're going to show the dollar amount, how many hours, what does that translate? So to your point, maybe the next round, we pick and choose some other KPIs that we'll put on the dashboard, and maybe it'll be part of Gene's fitness numbers. We're seeing an increase of 5% each year, whatever it might be. So,
or maybe we can include the full dashboard with the book like we used to have that tied more directly. I mean, not that we had the full KPI detail, but we had more specific, like levels of service and that kind of thing tied directly.
number of participants and so forth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, we're tracking that. It's just not the top
Here.
ones that we were in.
Yeah.
Correct. So again, Gene, you want to add anything to that?
Oh, go ahead, no. You're good, keep going.
But again, this one is pretty much a static budget. It's got a fund balance that continues to grow, and what that allows Jean to do is if she needs some new fitness equipment to replace, she can come back to the council and say, we have enough fund balance, we'd like to use some money here to support the fitness side of programs. So if you go to, I'm sorry.
Can I just ask a question? And you're going where I'm leading to. Help me understand why we have similar funds for the senior center or senior services.
I can't speak,
Go ahead, Ray.
these are pretty typical for park and recreation departments to do these. It really allows flexibility. I think on a finance side, again, it takes certain things out of expenditure restraint, which gives the whole city flexibility. You don't see a lot of personnel costs here. It's more the programming support costs. So it's more of the flexibility, and if you'll see, like Jane Wells offered a ukulele program, which they found is great for brain fitness and other things. So it gives staff that flexibility to do that because they might go over an expenditure budget, but they're charging enough of a fee to cover that program cost again. And Mark, I don't know if there's something else
It's the
historically.
cyclical nature of recreation activities, and if they come up with a great idea, we don't want to thwart them from doing it. So it's here, so it stays out of expenditure restraint, but it's covered by fees. I mean, Gene and staff know if you're gonna have a program, you gotta at least get some return on that cost. And then the static things that are pretty basic to operating the senior center are in the 231 account.
That's not true, though. They're all the exact same goals
They got
and
the,
accomplishments.
But it's where it ends up getting, they may have put some of the similar things in, but the reality is where they're showing up in terms of paying for them, they show up in different accounts.
They're showing up in two different accounts, but it's still the same division. It's still the programs that are coming from the senior center, I guess. So that's how we've always reported the accomplishments and the goals, because they cross over from budget to budget, basically.
So if one is supposed to be programming and one is more static, I think what Bob and I are saying is we would kind of expect that to be more delineated if the accounts are, but maybe that's an accounting bucket question.
That's really, it's probably more of a formatting issue, and we certainly make note of that. If you just want to see it in where it's actually occurring, the
It's just not very
expense.
transparent.
Well, it's probably double transparent, if anything, because it's not shown once but twice, but it should be shown in one or the other, and that's okay.
And we can have that updated as far as some of the accomplishments and goals for the programming, specific programming things. We can definitely do that instead of, I would say, duplicating. That's typically how it's been done, so I'm pretty sure Gene just followed the same. So we can do that, and maybe, Mayor, that's some of the information we can share then. What you were looking
With the
for
other
is,
KPIs.
right, how has the fitness programs increased the last year, something like that.
Or the
So-
intergenerational programming, what was increased
Mm-hmm.
last year?
Yep, and we have that information, so
Yeah. And it probably came to us in another form, but I'm just kind of like mentally still going back to when we saw those things in connection with
right.
the dollars.
You saw the numbers.
Not that I'm change averse. I can learn.
Nope.
So what I think you're saying here is that there's one fund that's really benefits looking at like the performance level of like revenues related to programming. And then there's a more general senior services budget that kind of encapsulates like the overall operations of the senior center. Is that a good?
It is,
way of
but
looking at
there's,
it?
but there's fees, a portion of the fees will go into each account and help
Sure.
offset some of those expenditures and try to keep the tax levy down in the 231 account, so.
So then, and I'm gonna lead in for you. The one thing the most specifically that I noticed, like in regards to revenues, is that in the senior services division, there's a lot more there's a lot more money coming in from like our partners and our counties and our neighbors, stuff like that. And so, which, you know, in my mind means that they're overall paying for their access to that. So,
Yes, and the funding has shifted a little bit. In the past, the fees were split 50-50 between the two, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the program fees are still 50-50 to help support the two budgets. What we're doing this year is, as part of the fitness programming through the health insurance programs that seniors have, there's a portion or a reimbursement that the senior center can get through the health insurance Medicare reimbursement. So what we've done is, that used to be 50-50 shared as far as revenue goes between these two, to help offset some of the costs for those additional personnel changes or some of the costs that we don't want to say, let's increase the tax levy higher. We've shifted some of that Medicare reimbursement to be more in the 231 instead of the 201. And the 201, like I said, we've been doing a good enough job of growing that fund balance. So the fund balance should not be affected. That'll continue to grow. But the 231 and shifting some of those revenues will help keep the tax levy lower. You'll still see that we are asking for a little bit more in tax levy, and that's why we provided the history for you. So as we're jumping into 231, which is on pages 146, this will show again some of those, the KPI numbers that we've been talking about. And as one item that, in the budget variance, you'll see that we talked about a number of the computers have to be replaced at the senior center. Those are staff computers and laptops. What we've done is worked with Russ and Mark. We're trying to get some of those replaced this year, so there's less of an impact next year. So that helped reduce some of the issues next year as far as what we'll need for funding. But I really want to point out for the senior center, because as most of you know, they really rely heavily on volunteers over there, and it's a testament to Jean and her staff, the front desk, programs, a lot of the special events. Not to jump ahead, but 147, if you take a look at the number of volunteer hours, they're close to 5,000 volunteer hours every quarter, which I just ran the quick numbers, but over those 3 quarters, it's about 14,500 hours at $25 an hour. That's about $370,000 of volunteer service that we're getting over at the senior center in 3 quarters.
Gene, that's fantastic. Very nice job. I mean, that's found money for the taxpayers and everybody else. So that's incredible.
Yes, and we work with, tremendous volunteers, older adults that really enjoy coming to the center and being a part of the center. They are more than willing to help us with whatever project we ask them to do, so that's huge.
And the other thing that Jean and Ann Schaefer, our marketing and fund developer, have done over the last 3 years, I think since Jean has been here, is really solidified the relationship that we have with the Friends of the Oshkosh Senior Center. You'll see that I think when Jean got here, we were getting about $60,000 or $61,000 in support annually from them, and I believe this year we're up over $75,000. 65. So still a great relationship, and again, without them, that's $65,000 that we would have to find somewhere else. So I think, just the relationship has really worked out well. Everybody hopefully has heard about the Food Truck Fridays. It's a great fundraiser for the Friends of the Senior Center, which ultimately turns around and they can help out the senior center more. I know that they've helped out with some other equipment in the past. I think we had a washer or a dryer go down at the senior center. We're able to go to the Friends and say, can you help us out? And they're willing to donate a washer and dryer for us. So just a lot of cooperation with different groups.
Do you remember with the Food Truck Fridays, like what that brings in for donations? Do you know?
I don't know how much they want us to share because
I'm
it's.
not quite sure if this year that July event was that really hot event. So I want to say I'm estimating between $25,000 and $30,000 for the summer that they take in, and a lot of it is through the sponsorship dollars. So we've had some tremendous sponsors that help us with that event.
Okay.
Yep, and that's the same dollar amount that I've heard as well. And I think, just having it at South Park, I think it's really generated some life for South Park with the, the renovations we did and just getting people down there. I think they've really started to see what the park has, and, it's just another great community activity down there, so.
So now with them, they do a spring appeal letter that they send out to the community, and then they do the Food Truck Fridays in the summer, and then they do a fall appeal. Before I got here, they were doing all these tiny little fundraisers, which were taking up so much time, but not as much revenue back for them. So they've really kind of narrowed that down with the help from Ann to really focus on just those 3 projects, and they've been successful. So.
Something interesting is, there's contacts that I have or clients that are servers at different restaurants and things like that through town who have said Food Truck Friday has been so busy and the lines have been so big that it's then spread out to other neighborhood establishments to take the family out to eat. So,
Good.
I mean, that tells me and I've been there, I've seen some of the Fridays where it's just crazy busy.
Do you want to share some of, Mayor, some of the questions you had? Jean does have some of her numbers here, and if you want to read them off, just if you didn't make enough copies, just so people.
Yeah, I did something. Kind of just share, I guess.
Just
This is
highlight
just
some.
something that we keep track in our software system on our attendance, and we've kind of cleared up our records in the last couple of years to kind of make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. And our 2018 and now current 2019 our attendance, we break down into the different events that we do there so that we can really get a good picture of who we are and what we do. So that's why fitness just pops out. And, when you're talking about 51% of our participation is with fitness, that's why it was really important that we structured into that part of it. So we do focus mainly on making sure that people that walk through our doors are getting some type of fitness, wellness opportunities, as well as social and educational. And those are the three things that we really try to focus on. And then some of the other things that we do offer are services that people can come in and get from the center too, so.
And right now, the kitchen, the commercial or certified kitchen is only used for warming and serving meals, not any meal prep, right?
In terms of,
At the
we do,
South Building.
yeah, I mean, once a month, we provide a meal, which is, special, kind of a special event. But, yeah, it might be that we're just prepping something and warming it up. But then our AdvoCap uses the facility daily
Oh, they
to
do.
offer meals. And
That's
then
that
they get
noon
the
meal,
catered,
right?
they get the catered meals in, and then we provide meals to the community.
And there's a small charge for those lunchtime meals.
They ask a donation, because they get government grants for that program too, so.
Is it the same people providing the catering every time, or is it
Yes,
different? Okay.
they contract, I do believe yearly with a company. So,
And that's just one site throughout the community. AdvoCap has those meal sites at several different facilities throughout our community, so. I had a couple more questions on the revenues, just to kind of clarify.
Which page are you on, Bob? I'm sorry.
Good question, 148.
Okay.
The difference between 4792 and 4972. Two different miscellaneous revenues. And the part of what spurred my question on it is wondering where the revenue or the donation from the Friends of the Senior Center go.
that would come into the 4792 miscellaneous service revenue. And then the 4972 might be something that is a smaller,
The Friends donation, I'm 4952, correct?
the 75,000, I'm sorry, yeah.
4952. So what are,
No, you totally answered my question, just not in the way that I was expecting.
okay,
So,
so you found what,
well, I guess I'm still wondering what's the difference between the 4792 and the
Okay, okay.
4972.
The 4792 is where our Medicare fitness reimbursements are going into, so that number jumped up. And then we also split our program rates income, so part go into the 201 and some go in the 231.
Okay,
And then we also put all non-resident program rates into that account, 4792.
Okay.
And then the 4972, that might be a donation that we get from Peace Lutheran gave us a donation. Our newsletter revenue that we get kickback from when they sell ads from our newsletter gets put in there.
I think just looking at it too, when when your chorus goes out, the facilities will provide some
Donate.
donation or whatever, so we put that into that account as well and not in the gifts and donations, so,
all right, thank you.
sure. If nothing else for Gene, the next one would be Riverside Cemetery, which is page 166.
Sorry, Jean, can I just ask real quick again? The space that used to be leased out there at the South Building, is that being leased out again to another group, or is it still open?
It's open, we use that for programming.
That's where that kitchen is too.
So the cemetery, again, is a division of Bill's in our landscape operations. Pretty static budget again. Revenues are really based on when people are buying their plots and the interest that we're gaining off of any money that we have on the Eternal Care Fund. And so it's, other than tax levy, those are really the revenue sources that we see. I guess you want to talk about one of the positives, the cemetery tours, I guess?
Oh,
would
sure.
be some-
Yeah, this last year, actually, we started a historic cemetery tour, which the mission of that was primarily to get folks on the site and familiar with the site, rather than come there just for a funeral or some event like that. We wanted to kind of put it out there as more as a community asset in a park, and we've placed a lot of emphasis on the history of that site since it is on the National Registry of Historic Places. We've done quite a bit of modernization, but restoration of the chapel building. So the cemetery tours have given us an opportunity to get people out there and enjoy the site a lot. So consequently, we're hoping then, given that familiarity, they'd be more inclined to buy spaces there and that sort of thing. So I think a lot of what we've heard was that people drive by it all the time, and there's a lot of burials there. They think the place is full and look elsewhere for a burial location. So we're out there trying to market it a little better to get people to visit, and and it's been fun for a lot of people. So I think last year our tours raised over $1,000, and usually to sell out crowds. So we never seem to have any difficulty getting folks out there to enjoy the site and enjoy a little bit of the history of it. Well,
I was just going to say that I think everyone that we offered through the cemetery was full, and we had a waiting list. And I know that the museum offers cemetery tours as well. And I know Brad had shared at one of our staff meetings that they have a large waiting list of people waiting to come in and visit the site. And for us, it's great, and it was part of Bill worked with Ann Schaefer again on a marketing plan. Let's get people out there and get them excited about what we have in Oshkosh, even if it's a cemetery. But I think once people get out there and find out who's buried there and some of the history, it's just a way to get more people there for marketing a tough sales site, I guess. So, anything else you want to add on? Any questions at all on the cemetery? Again, it's basically whatever's plots are sold and the investment income.
Is there a ghost tour or something? I thought there was something going on.
We've had not a ghost tour. I believe that
Cemetery Tales, I think it was.
Oh, maybe that's what it
museum,
was.
yeah, the museum has a Cemetery Tales tour. Ours have been primarily historical figures in the community, as well as we just rolled out last month a beer baron and tavern owner tour.
That's what I think.
So that was actually very well received, where we visited a lot of the sites for some of the past brewing companies, and we had special guests from to come out and lecture on beer history and that sort of thing. So it was kind of a unique approach. We've also done Halloween tours as well, so that's always quite well received.
If nothing else, we'll jump into some that Chad can join me on. On page 172 will be the 255, which we looked at a little bit before, the revenue facilities account. If you look through here, you're going to see a lot more information in those additional pages than you have in the past. It might look confusing, and it is a little confusing, but we have a number what we call project accounts here. We have the zoo fund, we have the lake fly, the concessions, the amusement rides, the boat launch, the REITs concessions. So we have a number of project accounts here, and now we added Lakeshore Park as one of those. So you'll see a number of small budgets, which then roll up into the larger numbers, which are are shown on the first page, on page 174. So we'll have to answer any questions you might have, but it's a lot of information to digest, just because of so many accounts in there. We did see the boat launches were pretty heavily used all summer again. Revenue facilities, as far as what Jenny takes care of. Jenny's on vacation this week, otherwise she would be here to, really toot her own horn on a lot of these special events that she promotes and has throughout the facilities. Again, you look at volunteer hours on page 173. We utilize a lot of volunteers down there for our special events. She is always, hitting people up for helping us out on volunteers down there for the special events. We just had the Zulaween Boo 2 weekend, not this past weekend, the previous. This was our 17th year, and this was the second most attended Zulaween Boo. I think there were over 4,200 people came to the event in those 2 days.
If you guys get a chance to go down, it's awesome. I mean, so Bill and Chad, you guys need to step up on the volunteer hours for the tree trimming crews and some of that stuff is what I'm hearing.
Volunteers with chainsaws.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna have Grinninger
gotta
back
make
here
that-
with
break that
risk and liability insurance.
I'm thinking of that Geico commercial right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Ray, a question regarding not just boat launch, but aren't our transient docks also part of this?
Yes.
And do we have any way of counting how much those are being used, or is there even a fee associated with those?
The transient docks, as in,
Like along the Riverwalk?
yeah, we don't have a fee, and part of the reason is when we get a DNR grant, it's difficult to charge a fee for those. As far as getting a number, I can't say. I know the ones by the Best Western are obviously full all the time. The ones along Marion Road section, which aren't heavily used,
Yeah.
we've had a lot of discussions on that. A lot of the reason is it's not slow no wake in that area, and there hasn't been a really mixed retail development, I think, that the city's holding out for that will attract more boaters there to use those and maybe stay overnight or visit a restaurant, whatever might be developed there. But as far as
Did you
getting
say
numbers,
it's not slow, no wake, and that's part of the reason, or it is?
Oh,
That is
It
the
is-
reason.
yeah, if it was slow no wake, then more boaters would use that because
Would
their boats
trust
would be
it.
getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a person who put a boat in any one of those slips right now because of the amount of
rock.
weight. They'll get, just destroyed in that space.
And we don't have a say in that, right?
We do.
We do, but I think until we have something there that would draw boaters there, it has come within the last, I've been here 10 years now, I think it's come up twice, and it's been soundly defeated by the public, the boating community, the fishermen, because of extends the time to get in and out of the river system. So I think once we get to that point of having something down there that's an
When the
attraction.
merge building is constructed, and there's potential retail on the bottom and other
I think
things.
there'd be a good argument to make that a no wake zone.
And
But-
you'll get challenged on that.
Oh,
but
yes.
Right now, it wouldn't be worth it. To suggest it to you now would just
Yeah.
get you in trouble, and you don't need that. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth having that discussion and debate when there's something there to.
Oh, they'll show up in
They'll
droves.
still show up.
Well-
They will
Yeah.
still show up. I mean, that's legit. You have to be aware of that.
Yep. Any other, not to get too far into it, but the other item becomes Mercury they use that test area
Right, that's
quite
right.
often. So they have been very much
Their
opposed to it in the
test
past. Right. So we shall see.
But I guess the original question was whether or not we charge a fee, but if we use the grant money, we can't. But if we were to add, I think someone talked about adding electrical in those, maybe those ones down there to allow for more overnight, then a fee could be charged, is that right?
There is a way we can charge a fee. To your first question, I believe we did put the conduit in there to add electric in the future, and that may happen then. There is a way to charge, but there has to be some justification, some other reasons behind it. So, yes, there is, but we have to go through a process with the DNR and with the city. So,
Would
But-
it be based on demand, Ray? If that demand picked up or something like that? Because right now you couldn't make that case.
I need to look into it a little bit further. I don't want to speculate right now, but we have looked into it, and I think it's something we can do.
It's not a no, it's not a yes.
in the future,
somewhere in the
potentially.
middle.
Let's
Yes.
start with a question about, do we have track? No, we don't keep track of the.
No, the
free-
transit.
It's free boat parking,
Right,
essentially,
yeah.
but it has a limit, so.
Yep.
But over at
how does-
Rainbow, we have stats because we collect.
We collect fees, right?
So how does that work then when merge is constructed and let's say residents there or the rivers or any of those want to tie up on a regular basis because they live there? There's no limitation, right?
We can, because I know I've had requests from some of the rivers and some of those apartment and the renters there. And there's a process we'd have to go through for that. So eventually, when we get to that point, we'd go through further investigation of renting those out on a monthly basis or a seasonal basis.
But as is right now, anybody can use them for however that long.
That
they
is
want.
correct.
That's not limited.
I think it's less than 24 hours. We have that along the entire Riverwalk. So that alleviates that concern of people tying up there for multiple days. And that's even down by the Leach. It's 24 hours or less for mooring.
But that's no different than if you have a 2-hour parking and you go move the car and.
Exactly. And we don't have boat traffic enforcers.
Enforcement.
So
It's
we can
a
add that to
mark with
Jim.
chalk.
We can add Jim Collins to that, his responsibilities. But
Then we need to add a boat to their
their fleet,
Their
sure.
fleet,
You
yeah.
can add that to ours. We'll take
You
that.
volunteer.
Wouldn't mind, right?
Finance director will volunteer.
I think we'll have a lot of volunteers.
I'll continue through, and the next one on page 180 will be the Leach budget. Again, an area that Jenny spends a lot of her time on with special events. So if you take a look at, donations during the first quarter are up usually because that's our, when we'll get our larger donation from Verve to support our Tuesday night concerts, plus Jenny's got other sponsorships that she brings in. As we get further into the quarters of the year, you'll see that go down. But then if you look at, the number of volunteers, because we have Touch a Truck and other events towards the end of summer, again, looking at volunteer hours there of about 122 hours for that one quarter. And then not to go too depth into it, but if you take a look at the personnel positions, you'll see that is where we are now budgeting about 27% of Evan's position from the senior center, because now he's going to be assisting with us managing the Leach facility for us. So just some highlights there. We are looking at, Matt brought up some of the challenges we have with some of the mandates for our budget. This is a time where we need to look at replacing a number of bollards and lighting down there, so that is included in this year's budget. We work with Scooter from Electric on that and try to do as much in-house as possible, but the Leach has been open since 2006, and there's things that are starting to wear there, and so some of those things you'll start to see as well. This one is a pretty neutral budget. I mean, we don't ask for more tax levy here because we've been tasked with trying to get sponsorships and fees to support our programs. What we try to do is offer our internal programs at low cost or no cost to the residents, and then we rent the facility out to, obviously, to Waterfest and other events that come in there. The chili cook-off was in there recently, and early on the marathon. So we have a number of weddings, a number of different special events throughout the summer, and just about every weekend it's being utilized. And into the summer, when our Tuesdays start, it's being utilized Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday at times. So, and when Jenny's got some plans to try to expand some programs down there again this year, or next year, I'm sorry.
So the total budget down there is 25 grand?
No, that's fund balance. It's
Oh, I'm sorry.
112,000.
112, okay.
Yep.
Take.
I thought that might be a little low.
If no other questions, the next one on page 185 is the Pollock Pool. This summer was a good summer. As you recall, we had to come back to the council and get a budget amendment because of the Pathfinders event being here. And typically when they're in town, we sell a heck of a lot of concessions. And up until the point when they got here, we had a good sales of concessions. So revenues were good. Number of attendees, I think were pretty good. If you take a look at volunteer hours, it's a little bit less here because we have less programs here, but Jenny still utilizes some volunteer staff there. pretty static. One item that we did do this year is we put a new spray toy. You want to talk about that a little bit on what it was exactly?
It's a zero depth water feature, which is actual Carl the Clownfish slide for a tot slide in the zero depth area. So actually, we try to start doing a replacement of those annually as budget permits to do so going through. I mean, you're looking at was it 2005, 2006 when that facility started as well, and starting to do some changes and upgrades to that. The biggest thing that's not planned for, but I was a knock on wood, but once we start getting into pool heater replacements and stuff, that'll be a different item to consider at some point, although nothing is but set aside for it right now. So, but
This is a fund that, when the pool was constructed, there was $1 million maintenance endowment set up at the Community Foundation. That's continued to grow, and that's when we have some of those major issues come up where we'll plan for budgeting and funding it from that source as well. So it shouldn't affect the tax levy, but those are some of the major costs.
Does Carl the Clown, does that accommodate guys my size?
I'm not going to
Radio-
comment on
radio
that.
silence. Radio silence on that one.
I've seen it, it wouldn't.
If not, we already, the street tree program on page 200, we already touched on earlier. That's, the one where a lot of bills, grants, and donations go into, and we have offsetting revenues for the expenditures. So we still have to get into capital, correct, Mark?
Yes. Is that the end of your operatings?
I am done with operating, yes.
Okay, yeah, then capital improvements.
Ray, I got one last question on Pollock Pool. How long do you think that maintenance fund, I mean, what's if you had to guess at the life expectancy of that thing?
We have good life in that.
Yeah.
Typically, what they would like us to do is just utilize the interest that's been rolling off of that.
Okay.
We've been doing a little bit more of that with some of the increased costs there to try to keep the levy down. So without having it in front of me, I want to say the account is probably at about 1.6 million potentially.
Okay.
Oh, it's growing.
Wow, nice job.
CIP, and this is where if you take a look at these two sheets that I handed out, 2020 and 2021, hopefully as the council knows, what I do is we'll take our 5-year CIP to the Advisory Parks Board. Typically that's done back in May or so, April, May. We'll bring it in. The Parks Board will take a look at each year, may move things around, may ask questions about certain projects. And then what I ask them to do is make sure this is prioritized by what you see all of our needs are over the 5 years. And so that's how we got it to this point. I'm going to open CIP. I don't know if we're going through the CIP book that you have. Hopefully it's page 2020-24 is the park improvements.
It should be pointed out that the list that Ray provided you is not, they weren't all funded.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. You'll note that when we go through, I wouldn't say typically, but on a good year, I would say our top 3 or 4 projects, depending on the dollar amounts and what other needs the city might have, will get funded. And then what happens with, those projects that are not funded in 2020, the majority of those will get pushed into 2021, and we take it back to the Parks Board, say, these were not funded last year. How do you want to see those fit into the next 2 years? So the first project on page 24 is the Lakeshore Park development. Talked about this a little bit earlier. We're currently at the Parks Board a week ago yesterday, made the recommendation to the Plan Commission and Council to approve the preferred concept plan. At this point, I've reached out to Smith Group. I had hoped that they were going to be coming to Plan Commission, one of the meetings in November. They have conflicts on both of those meetings. So as of right now, it's going to be on the Plan Commission December 3rd, which should then be coming to council hopefully December 10th. So I apologize for the delay, but project got a little bit behind us, and it shifted their schedule and other priorities and some things with them. So if you haven't seen it, I'll give you a quick rundown, at least for phase 1. I'm sorry.
Mayor,
No, he's probably gonna answer it right there. I don't wanna jump ahead.
Okay, so we had, in our CIP, we had roughly proceeds of $2 million, and I know Finance Director was going to be taking a look at those monies because we were utilizing a portion of the proceeds to offset some of the cost of the operations of the golf course up until now. So that number needs to be confirmed, but it's in the ballpark of 2 million, and we can confirm and get back to you on that. But the phase one of the preferred concept plan that will be coming forward, phase one budget target is $2.8 million. What we've done is we've built a pretty hefty contingency in here of about 35% above and beyond that because of some of the site challenges we've seen, not only archaeological, but now with some of the other contaminated soils. So 2.8 is the target budget. Target budget with contingency is about 3.8. So we're looking at, in phase one, just to give you an idea, if you didn't see the Parks Board packet, the four-season building at the end of Panoqua with terrace areas surrounding it, public plaza area around that building with a splash pad, a parking lot for the use of that four-season building. I think it's about 80 or 82 parking stalls in that parking lot. 2 multi-purpose larger lawns for open play, pathways defining certain connections on that eastern portion of the park property. On-street parking at the north end of Rainbow Memorial Park, which will help get access into the trail system. It'll assist with getting people into the park as well as assisting with parking needs that we know are happening on that north side already. The plan calls for a cul-de-sac at the end of Panoqua, and there would be parking allowed on that cul-de-sac because we know that people like to fish along that area, so people would have quick access to the new trail that was constructed there, so that would be included in this as well. So that's phase one that's being recommended from the Parks Board.
And that's design. It says it there, but I just want to make sure that
That's what my
It's
question was getting. There's no
design,
construction at all.
nothing. Yeah, that's a very ambitious plan, and the design is, that's not an inappropriate amount. When you take a look at some of the phases, subsequent phases, that makes sense, but it's just that you're not getting any new park out of that. You're getting a really well-designed,
Out of what?
out of phase one, design services, the 300,000.
That's 2 different projects. The design services that you're looking at, that's for Rainbow Park,
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
and that is more for the southern section of Rainbow Park.
I was on
So-
page 24, looking at Lakeshore Park development
So
Okay,
and the number 3 on his handout.
all right.
So we're not getting any construction out of that 2.8 or $3.8 million?
No,
there's $2 million roughly.
Okay,
that's,
That is most construction cost,
Okay.
yes.
all right.
sorry, my
Yes.
fault.
You scared me.
My bad.
And I did ask them to. Smith Group did come to me with about a $2 million phase one budget, but I did have them put other projects or things in here that I really thought the Parks Board would enjoy, the splash pad and other things that I think would go over well for our, the phase one. I think there's some interest in the community and certain groups to help support that with fundraising and grant dollars and other things. So I know it's higher than what we had planned here, but I think there's a potential for some significant donations as well.
But we wouldn't put the construction of those items that weren't funded, that were kind of a nice to have, ahead of what the already decided master concept.
Well, those are part of the master plan, but those would not be constructed unless we had those dollars.
Okay,
Correct.
It's kind of like Little Oshkosh.
yeah.
So that, like I said, was what the Parks Board had received, and if you haven't seen that or want a copy, let me know, but it will be coming to you, hopefully your first meeting in December if all schedules stay on. So,
I'm gonna ask you just a quick question because I just want to. It's phase one. I haven't seen the document yet, and I'm going to soon, but how many phases are they anticipating?
27.
Thank
we
you.
are showing 5 phases.
And total dollars? I don't want to feel all warm and fuzzy about.
Be nice, Ray.
Now remember, this is
I
a
understand.
20-year plan like most master plans are.
Correct.
So I will add,
Premise it well.
without the contingency, 2.1, 3.1.
I know what's going to be printed at some point, so. Chad,
10
how-
million. 10 million, phase 5s, or 5 phases. That does not include add 35% contingency because of all unknowns.
So-
Thank you.
So the number that I did, based on information
With
that you gave us, was just under $14 million.
You probably did the contingencies added in.
Contingencies, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Which is still a challenging number,
Well-
when you think of how things increase over time.
And I'll share with the board, which I showed with the Advisory Parks Board. We have a Menomonee Park plan that is multi-millions of dollars. We have a zoo plan that is multi-millions. We have a South Park plan that is multi-millions. So this is a 20-year plan, just like all those are, so.
And part of the reason you do that, and Ray's mentioned it, one of the first things, the first directive I gave Ray when he started almost 10 years ago was, we need park plans for every park in the city, because you don't have a prayer of getting a grant unless you can show that it fits in with a park plan. And there's a lot of ambition in those plans, but you won't, you started, everything is, a journey of 1,000 steps starts with a single step, so.
Well, and what I want to remind everybody is the reason these plans get so ambitious is this is what the public wants. We hold public meetings and we get input, and this is not a product of staff or just the Parks Board. This is the community telling us what they want, so.
So that's
Ray,
project
I
one.
didn't shoot the messenger, so I'm proud of all of you.
Well, this was a consultant that was actually worth their money. Not that anybody wasn't, but they were
Oh, you could say it, you
especially-
could say it.
They were especially, I was really impressed at their ability to synthesize all of those different community inputs in that visual concept, at least what I've seen so far.
No, I think the plan commissioners have been very positive about the commission, or the Smith Group as well. And I think part of that was our decision to hire them, was we saw, the different projects they've worked on, especially along some waterways. And they had some really great projects, we thought. And it could have been a much more ambitious scope of services had we not talked them into something we need to budget here, so.
So the question that I have was that I was actually looking at the 2021.
Okay.
And I was looking at what's in the book for 2021, and I'm just wondering, it doesn't look like the Rainbow Memorial Parks improvement is in the book. Is there a reason why that is not in the book? Because what we have is in there South Park, Menomonee, West Haven, Rainbow Memorial Park, play, equipment, and surfacing. So on here, is park improvements the same thing as park,
You're on 2021.
correct?
This was what was requested to the city manager and finance director. What was funded is based on what they're able to fund.
Okay.
So when you're looking, stay on 2020 if you'd like. Just real quickly, we didn't have, Lakeshore Park is on here. So Lakeshore Park, design at Rainbow was this number 2. West Haven, ball fields, number 4, and then Spanbauer. So essentially the top 5 projects on here of our requests were funded for next year. The Congress Avenue tot lot is one that the Neighborhood Association applied for grant funding from neighborhood funding this year, so that was funded. So really our top 5 projects were funded for this year or next. But then if you take a look at, again, what the Parks Board had, projects 6 through 10 were not funded at this point. So those, when I take it back to the Parks Board next year in April and May, we will put in here, saying, all right, now here's the projects that were not funded in 2020. How do they fit into what you wanted in 2021? So it goes back to what we can afford and what we can get done. And I know the mayor and the Bike and Pedestrian Committee had some questions about the Menomonee Park trail improvements. If you look at 2021, that was on here, a request for $50,000, and that's a small section that has had some water, some drainage issues on the north side. Again, the Parks Board, this is where it was slated. The council has ultimate decision. If you feel that that's a project that you would like to see funded and you have funds available, definitely is a project that you can move up or do what you'd like at. But I want you to know that there's other projects on here that were rated ahead by the Parks Board, or whatever that may be. So
Let me rephrase my question. So whatever's in here for 2021, that's got your direction in it.
2021 or 2020?
I'm focusing, I'm a year ahead of myself here.
Okay.
Push
But what page are you on, just so I can follow you?
2021-20. That's a lot of,
Okay.
so in here's 5 listed already, 5 projects for 2021.
Yes.
And on here, we've got 11. How did we determine that these 5 got put in the book? Actually, there's 6. These 6 got put in the book.
A lot of it comes down to the city
That would be a
manager
question for me.
and the scoring system.
We balanced 2 full years of the CIP to the borrowing limit set by council. So it was 12,500,000. And so as we went through these, we went through the 2021 projects, similar to how we went through the 2020. And there's a line that we draw because of the limits. Full third of our capital improvement program is for street projects. And then all the other projects essentially compete for that. So I think we got, as far as the Menomonee Park trail improvements, and then I think the West Haven Circle lighting was actually a 2020, it was actually a 2020 project, but we knew in terms of, sometimes you just bump projects to make it fit, and I talk about puzzle pieces. It was only 25,000. It couldn't fit in 2020, or I'm sorry, it fit in 2020, but it got, that one got bumped. It was on their 2020 list, but we bumped it to 2021.
So then, just, so then you kind of guide in regards to that for future, and then that comes back to the Parks Board.
And they start all over again.
And start over again. They tell you it may be different than what you want, or maybe even differently what Ray wants, but that's kind of how that process
Yeah,
works.
their priorities weigh heavily in our in our final thoughts, but not everything in 2020 got picked. So with time being a consideration, we balance it, but we know full well, especially because Ray does get this to the Parks Board early on. They're going to give us a 2021 and a 2022 next year, and we're going to go through the same process.
Yeah, 2021 will change based on what wasn't funded this year.
But we don't do the scoring in the future years like we do for the current.
No, we don't. We only score them in the current year. So all of the projects on the 2020 list were scored, regardless of whether they
But
made it
2021
in.
and beyond, we don't do scoring because that can shift and change.
Yeah, pretty much. But we don't give weight in the scoring system to the Parks Board, but I absolutely listen to what the Parks Board says, and I think Ray does as well. You know, some of them have to be a little more realistic. You know, Ray, you know how Ray feels, very strongly about the building renovation. It's only 3 on the Parks Board list. So, the Parks Board they're advocates for parks. So that's very understandable. But Ray still, says, look, I think this is very important, and I've told council how I feel about it as well. But the Parks Board, because of their job is to be advocates for parks. So it's understandable that Ray made his recommendation, it's understandable they made theirs, and then it's ultimately going to be a council decision, because when you're spending $3 million for phase 1 of a 2-year project, that's a big thing to bite off. So,
And the other thing that plays into that too is if we do in 2020 the design for improvements at Rainbow, if you look at 2021, we did the design. Some of those improvements should then be a top priority for us to get. So, it really depends on what's funded the previous year as well.
How far out in the future are we to getting to further Menomonee Park master plan implementation or even street reconstruction? Because that comes out of parks, right? It's not
Yep, our
streets.
CIP. Well, let me just touch on Menomonee Park, because this year we did Little Oshkosh. That was $500,000. We did Oaks Trail, about $50,000. We have, I got my 5-year. We are starting to budget. At this point, throwing out a number of about $500,000, I think, in year 4 and 5 to start redoing the roads in there. We can no longer let those continue to deteriorate. So there's a placeholder at this point, and ultimately that may get shifted up, just
Sure.
based on what we need to
Depends
do.
on the winter, I'm sure, too.
Yeah, and it's just, there's some things that are heaving near the boat launch, and we're aware of that. And can we do certain things to get us through the next 3 to 4 years? And we'll have to see if we can do that.
Yeah.
Does any of the celebration of lights, someone had asked about the celebration of lights, and I explained to them that was a private, nonprofit organization. But does any of that go back into the park, or is it all, how does that
They'll
financially impact?
Yep, it's separate from us. They have their own account set up at the community foundation. They will make some donations towards our operations. I know in the past they've helped us with some upgrades for electric or some electric panels to help support some of their lighting. Where the 100-foot tree is, they paid to have that concrete pad placed there, and we use it for some of the special events that take place down there. So it's multi-use, but they paid for that. So they do make donations towards some improvements, some that will help their facilities, but also help the community in the long run too.
The biggest challenge we have, I feel bad about it, playing a little passive aggressive with Ray. Get these park plans done, and then he says, I got the parks plan done, and it's like, well, you only get this many projects. And so, but Ray's used to it, so that's across.
I just give the
Well,
community
in all
members your
fairness-
number now, so.
I mean, in
But
all
they're-
fairness too, you did have Lakeshore that kind of came into the middle of all of this unexpectedly.
Right.
But
And
we
that's-
have to judiciously go through the community, and, we've tried to alternate restroom and park playground type of improvements and alternate those. And, I think some of the neighborhood associations have said, hey, let's do a park. I think it's become habitual for the neighborhood associations to think that's all they can apply for. And they can do more than that, but they've said, oh, we can get our park done? Oh, that's nice. And it's a second priority because it's just not this year, but Congress Avenue Tot Lot was 2 or 3 on the list a couple years ago, but it's moved its way up. And then it got funded, in this case, by Great Neighborhoods. If it hadn't gotten funded by Great Neighborhoods, one of these other ones would have gotten bumped, and most likely would have been probably West Haven because it's a playground. So one of those would have gotten bumped, and that's the thought process
Yeah.
that Ray and I go through as we
And-
try to do
This one,
that.
this was a really unique, and I think it should be highlighted. This was a really well-planned, unique opportunity of coalescing with the Rock the Black for next year as well.
Which one are you talking about?
The
Congress.
Congress Avenue.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
In combination or in concert,
Mm-hmm.
that getting that leverage and that bigger impact, in similar timing. I mean, it's not done yet, but I think we're getting better at.
And we did the
coordinating
same
and
with
coalescing.
Stegbauer Sacred Heart Neighborhood Association this spring as
Exactly.
well. So, and we could have put the Congress Tot Lot out for proposals this fall, but we worked with the neighborhood association. We agreed that's better off. Let's hold until spring, get the proposal out early in January and February, so we're ready to go. So it's taking place with Rock the Block. So
yeah. Ray, how many years ago did you take me out to Congress and, force me to walk on the park and everything? It's like, Ray takes me out every once in a while. He says, all right, you got to see this. You got to, feel it and touch it. And that clearly, it was so visible. I mean, it's such the Congress Avenue corridor is so visible. So it's not just a matter for the neighborhood. It was a matter of what was appropriate for us to show.
well, and you'll see when you take a look at the future years for the CIP, we're really in that 5 or 7 year period where playgrounds are up for renewal. And if you look back to the city back in the late 90s and early 2000s, they were in the same situation. It was, we have 15 playgrounds throughout the city and we are deciding to do one each year. Well, what happens is you get through the playgrounds and typically within 15 to 17 years, that's when safety standards change and things need to be updated. See, it's almost like a cyclical approach where now we're trying to bite off a number of playgrounds over the next number of years. Same thing like restrooms. I mean, they were ignored and the council and the Parks Board said we need to do better, and that's what the citizens told us, in the comprehensive plans. So.
And I mean, the amount of people that go out and use these parks after we fix them up, it literally triples. I mean, I drive by 6 in Idaho and everything, and I see 3 times the people out there now that lot is, or that park is basically completed, and it's awesome, so.
And a lot of it goes back to the neighborhood associations. They
Yeah,
work the
well,
neighborhoods
absolutely.
and say, what would you like to see here? And I think once they have a little more ownership into it, it really helps too.
Yeah.
So I want to keep you going. I want to keep you on time. So that was Lakeshore Design Services for Rainbow Park improvements. That is currently funded, and then you'll see that we had, in the 2021, anticipated some improvements to take place. But now, if you take a look in the scope of the services for this project, it was anticipated now for 2022. I need to remind the city manager and the council that some of these improvements that are being designed and planned for are part of what Alan Davis and his staff are working on as far as the trail connection now from Lakeshore through Rainbow. So some of the improvements that they're planning for in 2020, 2021 coincide with our design and our project as well. So we'll start that design work. West Haven Circle Ball Field, again, just a ball field that's been heavily used by all the user groups and is in dire need of some repairs. So that one is the one we requested for next year. And then Spanbauer Field restrooms, this was the old South Side lighted. The new diamond was completed this year, turned out great, but now the restrooms are in need of upgrading because we know it's going to be heavily used. The youth user groups are going to be, they're just waiting to get on that field. We need to get these done. So what we'd be looking to do is complete that project in the fall of next year. We'll have to utilize the existing ones one summer and have something new ready in 2021.
Are we gonna be able to have like older persons games there so we can hit them out of the park much easier? It's
No.
so sad because it's a youth.
That's why we made
football.
it 215. If it's going to happen, it's going to be a 16-inch softball and no gloves. And
Yeah,
so
I grew up like many Oshkosh people. You
Yeah.
grew up playing there and having the long distance and trying your hardest to hit it out of the park, which many people could do other than myself. And but
I think you can do 215 though, Bob.
Oh, I think I can. So we got to have a modified league for that.
Yeah, it's one, it addresses the need for more youth diamonds in the city. Two, through the recreation department, the adult leagues, participation has gone way down. We see that continuing. Matt can attest to that. And a lot of their men's leagues have moved out to the county park, so we're seeing less use at REITs. So, talk in the future in our plan is we need more youth diamonds. We need an athletic complex. Is REITs the spot for that now that the adult numbers have gone way down? So those are some of the things we're already looking at. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but any questions on the park improvements?
X-ray.
I'm going to look. We've got a number of equipment pieces, major vehicles on page 38. If you take a look at department, you're going to see we have a number of projects in here. A lot of these, as we talk about park projects being pushed back for years, this is one where I think the city manager is feeling guilty in giving us some of those projects that he's pushed back in the past on us.
And it's also a realization that with that extra parkland, we've got to have this equipment to just leverage our personnel better. So that,
Ever heard of goats?
well, that's, Al Johnson's is kind of committed, so, but the reality is that we got to get more of this done.
Yeah.
It's a lot in 1 year to swallow. 557,000 is for just parks. Is
Yep.
a big number to swallow.
And as I said, a lot of our pieces of equipment have been delayed year after year. So
Especially that Clark one, right? The 1967
the 65 forklift.
Yeah.
That thing's built better than anything nowadays.
It was built in America.
We'll have it on Oshby for you to purchase.
Nice.
But as far as vehicles, Bill and Chad mainly address those. So if there's any questions, feel free to get in touch with either one of us or one of us three, I guess I should say. But those are primarily their operations. I'll keep moving on to page 45 and 46. Some of the CIP projects not funded. One is on page 45, Menomonee Zoo improvements. What we did in the past when we did the Menomonee Park Zoo plan, we had input from the user groups as well as the council, and this was pretty much going to be the city's skin in the game for some of these improvements. As you know, the otter exhibit was constructed back in 2012, I think, with just about all donations. We are currently finishing up the eagle exhibit, $228,000, all donations, whether it was from the zoo fund or not, it was all donations through that. So this was a request for some city funding to help with some fence repairs, with some path repairs, some of the main smaller infrastructure things that it's hard for us to get donations for, those things that aren't prettying up the facility. So this was one area that we really need to start doing a little bit better on our behalf, on the city's behalf, as far as some of the improvements there. And then the big one is on page 46. Our building, this was really phase one. This would be the potential purchase of the one property to the south, at least to get our project kicked off. I know the council has heard a number of times over the year that, you know, our building needs it. And I know we're high on your list, hopefully tops on your list. But sooner or later, we're going to have to make that decision to start moving it forward. I know there's a difficult, you know, decision on how to fund it. Come down and visit us any day you'd like. It's not the best place for our employees to be. It shouldn't be utilized any longer. And I think we could really see some improved efficiencies, as we've seen at the central garage or the streets facility. You know, maybe we could get some extra hours and time out of our staff out of the day, instead of moving equipment around or making sure we stage equipment in case we have a snowstorm and knock trees down and we got to come in and move equipment around to get it out to the sites. It just, as you guys know, it wasn't a facility for park. And so we're asking for some way to at least get the project moving and give us some hope, I guess. I believe that's it.
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Is it?
It.
For me.
We're
And
way ahead of
perfect.
schedule.
Chief Smith is due to come in at 2:30. We asked him to come a half hour earlier.
Break.
Thank you.
Mr. Pesha has to leave at 3, so he wanted to get a little bit of police in.
Question for you.
He wanted a little bit.
What happened to the
So we're
Bronx
good.
13 plaque that was on the corner of 6th and Sawyer?
He was asking for very little, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, he got,
Excellent,
live
thank you.
was last year.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
Ready?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you to discuss the police department's operating budget for 2020. To highlight some of the initiatives that we've accomplished or are working on in 2019, our team policing continues to be our overarching model in serving our community. One of our challenges is ensuring our new officers and staff continue with this philosophy. In the last nearly 4 years, 41% of our patrol officers are new to the force. 25% of our total staff are new to the department. With the influx of our new officers, we have to ensure that our new staff have the same motivation to serve under this philosophy. As a result of the staffing study conducted in 2018, several recommendations were provided to the department and to council. Based upon these recommendations, we began exploring ways to creatively implement many of the recommendations. Through the help of you on council, as well as finding efficiencies through technology, we were able to, in August of this year, begin the recruiting and processes associated with promoting one sergeant, adding one officer, adding a record supervisor, as well as adding a secretary to our administrative staff. In addition, we have eliminated our overnight hours at our front desk. This created no issues for us with the public. This was a seamless change that helped us provide more efficient staffing during our busy hours at the front desk. We're also implementing the reorganization of supervision of some of our civilian functions to align our practices with best practices as recommended by the consultants. There are additional recommendations that we will explore moving forward with in the future. The Vice and Narcotics Unit has been hugely successful in combating narcotics trafficking here in Oshkosh. This is the third year that it's been in existence, and their success is apparent. We're now hearing anecdotally from persons that we initiate investigations on that they do not want to come to Oshkosh to do business. Essentially, our drug investigations have decreased over the same period of last year. The dynamics have changed here a bit. Our users are now driving down to Milwaukee, and they're making the purchase of narcotics in Milwaukee. They're then traveling back here to Oshkosh. What is concerning to us is that after seeing a decline in drug overdoses last year, we're now seeing overdoses going the other way. As an example, in September of 2018, we had 0 overdoses in the city. That would be attributed to heroin. In September of 2019, we've had 5 overdoses. This in turn has increased our deaths related to overdoses. This is attributed to the use of fentanyl and illegal narcotics. I shared with you, those who were on council last year, I believe, the small amount of fentanyl that is required to cause death in an overdose. It's really just molecules of fentanyl. It's a terrible, terrible drug. As a matter of fact, last year Menomonee had an officer that was impacted by fentanyl. They had to Narcan that officer. We're seeing an increase in the use of cocaine as well as methamphetamines. This laced with fentanyl is becoming a deadly combination. To give you an example of where we are with our overdoses, heroin deaths in August of 2019. Heroin overdoses in August of 2019, we had 1. In September of 2019, we had 5. So we had an increase of 4 heroin overdoses. Our overdoses throughout the year have increased by 10. We've gone up 21% in overdoses of all drugs. And total deaths year-to-date have increased by 1 from this time last year. So you can see we're still struggling with that problem here in the community. I would be remiss if I did not speak about our accreditation. This is what I believe is very important to us as a department as it relates to the professionalism of the work that we do here in the Oshkosh Police Department. The Oshkosh Police Department is the only municipal law enforcement agency in the state of Wisconsin that's accredited at both the state and the national level. We can't say that enough. There is no other municipal agency in this state that has a national accreditation, but Oshkosh does. We've been accredited at the national level since 1994. We have over 480 standards that we must maintain in order to be accredited. In 2018, CALEA, our national accreditation body, went to an annual review of standards, taking a quarter of the standards required in conducting their reviews. We were successful in 2018 on the first annual, and we're now going through our second annual review. Also in 2018, we successfully completed our WILIAG, or our state accreditation assessment. We're adding a new police canine that was funded by donations from the community. This canine and his handler are currently going through training in New Mexico. When you see them hit the street, it'll be a little bit different from what you may be used to seeing. This canine will be a single-purpose dog who will be focused on detecting illegal narcotics. His name is Legend, and he's a highly motivated golden lab. So we're going to have a huggable dog this time. His handler is Officer Randy Johnson. An initiative that I am most proud of for 2019 is our mental health and resiliency program for our officers, staff, and our families. As a profession, police officers suffer far greater instances of PTSD than the majority of civilian-related jobs. Officer suicides across the country are on the rise. Discipline related to depressive behaviors increase when your personnel are not cared for. And of course, the families of our employees suffer. As a result of some issues that came to light in 2018, the department took a closer look at how we are caring for our officers. Through this evaluation, we decided to initiate our mental health resiliency program. This effort begins at the managerial level, at the management level. As the leader of the PD, I had to gain the trust of our staff that I cared for their well-being, that it was okay for them to ask for help. Through our efforts, we've conducted several training sessions to help our officers and their families addressing stress reduction, training sessions to help our officers through financial well-being, healthy eating, as well as physical fitness. We've partnered with the YMCA to offer group training sessions for our officers and their families. We've also provided opportunities to bring department members together for family gatherings. We've even brought spouses in to sit with their department members to listen in on training associated with dealing with the stressors of a law enforcement profession. Finally, we brought in professional counselors and had them embedded within the department. Officers and staff members had the freedom to speak with these professionals with confidentiality, that the stressors that they are dealing with in their life do not become public knowledge. We have seen the results of our efforts bearing fruit. Officers are embracing the wellness efforts and are taking advantage of the training efforts as well as the counselors. I believe that this is a high point in our department as we destigmatize the mental well-being of our police personnel. Most of this was funded through generous donations of our community members. The city's strategic plan is important to us and how we contribute to the success of the city. To highlight several of our KPIs in the additional work that we've done related to the strategic plan, we've completed year-to-date 71 citizen, community, and neighborhood presentations and meetings, 44 school presentations related to various relevant topics for our youth, completed 12 step-up and youth mentor programs, 109 outreach events specific to our diverse population groups. We now have 57 officers trained in crisis intervention. We've instructed 366 kids in the DARE curriculum this year, which does not include this fall's class. And of course, related to substance abuse in the community, you're aware of the work of our Vice and Narcotics unit. This is the third year of our motorcycle unit, and the unit's been successfully deployed throughout the year to address transportation safety at various locations, and specifically in roundabouts. Anecdotally, I'm hearing from members of the community that they've been really paying attention and looking out for the motorcycle while they're conducting traffic enforcement. The motorcycle unit has conducted 303 traffic stops. They've investigated 74 accidents. They've participated in 6 special events, and they've been deployed 99 times this year so far. Another initiative that I'm proud of is the success of our department mentor program, which directly impacts a city goal to develop a professional workforce within public safety. We've created 35 mentor and mentee pairs within the department. We added 11 this year, which is an increase from 8 last year. I believe this program is helping the growth and retention of our department. As an indicator of our efforts to improve our external communications, we've seen a 46% increase in our social media followers. We are using social media to tell the story of the police department. We know that we seldom have the media report on the good that we do, so we're taking it upon ourselves to talk about the good that we do. At the close of 2018, we had a total of 29,919 social media followers. As of October of 2019, we have 64,766 social media followers across all platforms. 2 of our canines have their own Instagram accounts. Odin has 28,900 followers all by himself. It's incredible. If you ever go to Instagram and look for Oshkosh Canine Odin, he went viral on a video that went all over the world. And I had requests from media groups wanting to use our videos.
Everybody loves those animal videos on social media.
They really do.
My wife-
But we use that so much as a positive for us.
My better half continues to ask when she can meet Odin, so I'm going to give her your phone number.
Please do.
So she can stop asking me.
Finally, our crime stats year-to-date are looking very positive. Just to highlight where we are, if you notice, I handed out a copy of our annual report from 2018. Steve, I'll get you a copy. I didn't know you were here.
No, it's all right.
But we were trending down at the end of the year last year. I want to say we were down 17% in our Part 1 offenses. And so far, year-to-date through September of this year, we're also down another 16.3% in our Part 1 offenses. And the Part 1 offenses are major crimes. Those are criminal homicide, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglaries, larceny thefts, motor vehicle thefts, and arsons. Of note, our larcenies are down 155 complaints from last year, and our burglaries are down 31, which is a significant decrease. Very happy about that. With that, I'll take any questions.
I got one question. It's not necessarily related to your presentation, which I enjoyed. 6466 line item on page 56. There's a increase in contractual, miscellaneous contractual services. What would that be for?
Oftentimes, our line items get moved around, specifically from one budget to the next, and we have certainly some increases go up for some of our software applications that we have, contractual increases that come into play. Let me find my notes here. You say 6466?
Yeah.
Correct.
We had increases in some of our squad details because we had to buy new cars. We have some mental health resiliency funding that's in there as well. Some of our software applications have incremental increases along the way. And as a note in that, you'll see come next year, I'll be coming to you with changes in our body camera program as we're going to be beginning to renegotiate that contract. It expires at the end of next year. So we'll be going to Taser and Axon and finding out what it's going to cost us for the following year.
In terms of some of your KPIs, you mentioned, the vice and narcotics unit a little bit. When you look at it just on face value, less in drug-related investigations.
Yes.
You attribute that to you doing a fair job at the very minimum of pushing them out of Oshkosh.
Yes.
We're still obviously funding those at full force for the vice and narcotics. Other areas of influence that we're hoping to see other positive effects from them, since we're seeing positive effects in the drug-related. If we're pushing them out, where else are we going to see some positives from that investment in them?
Well, in the coming year, we're going to start looking at some of our massage parlors, and we're going to be addressing those through hopefully creatively through some licensing. But as we can, we're going to start conducting some investigations in those areas.
Perfect. Good.
Just a small thing on page 56, 4522 revenue, non-special event revenue. What is that? It looks like it kind of bounces from year to year, 106 to 96.5.
Non-special event revenue. Am I new?
That's any special details that we provide to any, any companies
Yes.
in town here that ask for special security. So we have like the big special.
Thank you for
events.
reminding me.
Yeah.
We have two different ways of, it's actually just detailed out in the budget. We do special event overtime, where we have reimbursements that come in from those who go through the special event process. And then we also have companies that look to us to provide some security in the event that they have some one-off things that occur, or it's a non-special event type function, such as Quick Trips shareholders meeting comes to Oshkosh, and we do security for them. Oshkosh Corp, they have a shareholder meeting, we do security for them.
Isn't the arena in there
The
too,
arena's
Dave?
in there as well.
It's not,
Or the
at
biggest.
least we haven't considered it a special event.
Right.
Although we're rethinking that now, but
Right.
But
Right
we're
now it
not
is.
providing private security detail for like CEOs or anything, are we?
No, no. These are for their events. These are for,
Managing traffic flow and everything.
yes, yes. But if they're like their shareholder meetings, we do provide security during those, because we do believe that it's an important function for us to ensure that things that occur in there are orderly and done in a good manner.
A little late to the party, Chief, but we're coming into a pretty heavy election cycle in 2020. Any anticipation that they'll be coming through Oshkosh? We've had pretty good history of having presidential candidates and candidates coming here over the years.
Typically, when they come, they go to the university, and we'll assist the university if they're needed. If they do come in town, it's usually very brief. They don't really spend a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I mean, Ronald Reagan was here and gave a speech at the courthouse. We had George
Did a bus tour?
H. Bush or W. did a bus tour, and then we had a train come through.
Which was out at the airport.
Yeah, and then we had to block 41 off because he landed out of Gamey Airport. So, I'm just thinking, because a lot of that is reimbursement money from the federal government, their campaign.
They don't do a very good job.
But
of
they don't do a
reimbursing.
great job with it, which I all know. So I guess my thought is,
Like Medicare.
has there been a preliminary discussion at least where that money would come from? If we would need it?
We are
Pay our
actually in the process, along with every other major city in the state of Wisconsin, with working through an MOU with the city of Milwaukee, because of the Democratic National Convention.
Correct.
They don't have enough law enforcement there to handle all those functions. There is a grant and aid, you call it, coming from the Democratic National Party to reimburse agencies that assist Milwaukee. And so we are anticipating that coming in, but that'll go through our special funds and so forth to manage that. But without having the exact plans
Yeah,
of what we're using,
yeah.
we don't really have a vehicle to provide budgeting for that. But we do anticipate getting reimbursed on that particular event.
Okay, good.
You talked about your social media presence, and you hit it really well on the head. I think of all the city departments, PD does the best job telling your story. So whether it's attributable to Officer Mann and the job that Kate does, or any others, I think by and large your department excels at telling the PD's story, and a few departments could probably learn one or two things in terms of just getting that message out in a cohesive manner and driving that positive influence. Through your social media presence. I think you guys are doing great in
Appreciate
terms of
that.
that. So
It's important to us that we, as I mentioned earlier, that we tell our story, because nobody else will. And we need to make sure that when people look at the Oshkosh Police Department, they see a professional organization and everything that we do. But thank you for that.
What is the 9 p.m. posts on social media?
Kate,
It is Kate.
our 9 p.m. routine.
And, yeah. 9 p.m.
It's amazing how many different 9 p.m. routines she can come up with, since there's, 365 of them every year, and
Yes.
she's been doing it for 3-4 years.
I'm
I
waiting to
think, at
catch a
this point.
recycled one. I haven't found one
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
She comes up with something creative. Her son helps her out with those, and he's pretty good at that stuff, so.
Good. I think I had one other question. It's not a big deal, but it's still an increase in 7210 related to motor vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So, last year was projected at 189. Now you're projecting it at 203. What's the reason for projection?
Well, there's two reasons for that. First of all, Ford retooled all their vehicles, and we buy Fords, and so the cost went up on the vehicles. We were able to work out we took advantage of a situation when they shut down their factories, so we're getting 2019 pricing in 2020, but they still have cost increases. But additionally, in previous years, we budgeted for the auction of our old squads.
Okay.
And we were directed not to budget for that this year, so you see a slight increase in that. It's usually about $10,000 that we get from auctions of our squads. So that comes in as revenue, but we're just not budgeting for the reduction in our costs.
Budgeting the gross.
Yeah.
How often do you look at new manufacturers? I know Ford's gonna be stopping production on their cars.
They already have
Yeah.
stopped
so it's
production
like
of the
It's gonna
cars.
be eventually just SUV
No,
squads?
they are SUVs. Every Ford vehicle that you'll see out there, unless it's a pickup truck, is gonna be a SUV. And that's in departments across the country. And frankly, for our officers now, the small, as police cars got smaller and smaller, police officers didn't, and the equipment that they carry didn't get smaller either. So we have a lot of equipment that goes in those cars, to the mobile data terminals, to the shields, to rifle racks, the cars got really small, and we're like in a fishbowl. And so going with the SUV was helpful in that respect.
You can ride on one of those, in one of the squad cars.
Yes,
It's a tight fit up there.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, the front seat, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, tight for you, maybe not for others.
Yeah, well, and in terms of, because he touches on it with the vehicles, we talked about it a little bit this morning and a little bit yesterday, but with Public Works, especially with, they've got a cycle, they've got their maintenance records, and they're not just replacing a vehicle once it hits 7 years or 10 years. It's deemed no longer operable because of all the maintenance costs and the condition of the vehicle itself. I think it's a little different potentially for your department. Is it just a straight 3-year cycle you're replacing vehicles on?
We're not actually on the replacement cycle that was started before I got here. Mark can probably speak to that. Was about 6 squads a year, and we backed that off a little bit to 5 vehicles a year. Prior years ago, we didn't take good care of our vehicles, and they're run 24 hours a day.
And in 1 year, we took a year off.
Yeah.
We just had no vehicles at all approved, and the residual impact was
Yeah.
felt for 7 years, I'd say.
Right now, we're doing repairs on seats. We repair carpeting. We repair the dents and dings and anything that breaks. Catalytic converter goes out. As they get older, they run out of warranty, and because we're running them so hard, 24 hours a day, it goes up, 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 up.
I don't like to talk about line items in this level, but I will point out one. 6418 repaired motor vehicles is $40,000. First year I was here, that was $95,000. And that was a residual of buying no vehicles that 1 year and just the cumulative impact. The fact that we've gotten ourselves up to a reasonable replacement schedule has resulted in more care and maintenance and attention paid to the vehicles that do need attention and replacing the ones that have well exceeded their useful life. So we're half of that. And I'm very proud of the fact that we just said, look, we gotta bite this bullet. No pun intended. We really needed to do that.
And it goes into, when you look at two things, when you look at our operating budget, 94% of my operating budget is personnel costs. So I have 6% to fund everything else, to include vehicles, other than fuel. We aren't including our specialty vehicles. Last year, the council was gracious enough to fund our new crime scene vehicle. This year, we have an unfunded CIP, which is our SWAT team vehicle. That vehicle is, let me find my notes on that. Let's see, our SWAT team vehicle is 24 years old. It's an old
Isn't that
Chevy Grumman
2021,
van.
Dean?
What's that?
Are you sure it's not funded, but I think it's not funded in 2021?
It's not funded in 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Not,
But that's a $200,000 replacement, and as I'm sure you're aware, the SWAT team, they come when policemen need help. They come on critical incidents, they do high-risk search warrants. The most recent murder-suicide, they were there to assist in that. And we have to get everybody there, we have to get all their equipment there, we have to move them from one place to another safely. And that's a 24-year-old vehicle that by the time it does get replaced, it'll probably be close to 30 years old. And our maintenance costs are going up on that. We keep dragging it in with a wrecker to get it fixed and to get maintenance done on it. It breaks down, and we just do the best we can.
So there's not much in the chief's CIP. There'll be some discussions later on as we do the facility study that we'll be talking to council about. But that's another time.
What
And
about the enhancement?
that I wanted to,
Yeah.
that's why I was saying, we don't have much more. I wanted to transition to that. But I would say, Chief, so you know, I'm not sure if you were tuning in during the discussion of the fire training facility. I did mention that it's was what we call the relocation costs. There are residual costs, and council's aware that, you know, Third Avenue or some reasonable facsimile has to get done.
Right.
If the fire training facility gets done.
Mark has heard me a lot of times saying, if I get evicted, I gotta have someplace to go.
So we've kind of used it like community development is like, when we buy a building, if we got to pay relocation, he's the first person to get relocated along with.
Well, that being said, then does it make sense to tear down that old sanitation department? I know Alan talked about that and talked about it with the Boatworks property, but if we're gonna move ahead with a training center over there, and we need places to store things, we already have a building over there. I know it's a big old building.
We also have
It's a
that
shell.
other building at
Yeah.
7th Avenue that we haven't got any takers on an RFP.
I wouldn't recommend that one.
Okay.
The one on 7th, I think we need to keep our options open, not that open, but
All right.
we need to keep our options open. So those are the types of things we need to look at. The chief already has a facility on 3rd, so the question is do we do some stuff there to keep things? He has,
Well, that's not a very
Chief, help
big
me.
building over there, though.
We do. We have three buildings
Evidence,
over there.
thank you.
One is much younger than the other two. The other two buildings they shouldn't even be standing right now. But
Aren't they just metal pole buildings?
no, these are center block. The two ones that are still standing, they're center block and framed up. But we hold long-term evidence over there. We hold vehicles that we have to impound are stored there. Evidentiary vehicles are stored there, and it can be any number of different types of vehicles. We have a backhoe over there right now. We have some vehicles that are involved in fatal accidents that we have to hold on to related to prosecution. We also house many of our auxiliary vehicles over there. Our crime scene search vehicle is going to be going over there. There's a lot of needs that we do in that particular facility. In working with the space needs assessment that was recently completed, we just got the first draft back, going over that with Mark. There is a possible plan in place for utilizing Third Avenue constructively in conjunction with the training facility for the fire department on Sawyer Street.
So those are things as that unfolds. I think it's appropriate to give you the heads up, because it's not directly reflected in the CIP, just the fire training facility is, but we can't ignore that, and that's just gonna be out there. So that was actually my transition to your question was, the chief does have one enhancement. It's a relatively small
It
one.
is.
But again, you might look at me, Matt, and say, why didn't you just put it in the base budget? But it's not a health and safety issue, but it's certainly one the chief, I think, made a compelling case for.
Yeah, we have an opportunity. We've been testing an application that allows us to engage in the community even more than we already do. It's called the Relay app. It's in line with our strategic plan and aligning with our goal of providing a safe and secure and healthy community, and more specifically enhancing crime prevention and community policing strategies. The department's been testing the application that brings us closer to the citizens that we serve. The Relay application is an application that is free to our citizens that allows citizens to communicate directly with their assigned district officers regarding non-emergency complaints and calls for service. Our residents are becoming more and more reliant on technology in their everyday life. We have to be nimble enough to provide platforms that grow with our residents. With the Relay app, the citizen interacts with the officers through technology, allowing them to communicate any suspect information, as well as almost real-time photos of whatever the problem is that they want to report. In turn, the officers are able to communicate back to the citizens and keep them up to date on the status of their issues almost immediately. As I told you earlier, we have a large social media following, and oftentimes we see that people will try to report crimes on our social media, and that's not monitored 24 hours a day. Through the Relay, all officers on the street at any given time will be able to monitor and respond to the citizen needs. It's a monthly cost of $625 for us to be able to provide that service to the community. It's for 2020, it would be about $6,250 for us to have that application.
Would that be the same as like the C-Click Fix that we have, that we use for other departments?
It's similar but not the same, because there isn't, the C-Click Fix requires somebody to physically go look at it. It's not managed by us. Ours actually has a communication function back and forth. And the officers are they're able to get the data directly from citizens. If you're out at your house and you've got a car that's illegally parked, you can take a picture of it, you can send it to us, and we can go respond to it, rather than us having to get our way there. If there's some graffiti that just occurred or some kids are running away, you can take a picture of the kids running away and send it directly to us.
But they're not able to do that with their assigned district officers, like through their cell phones?
No, that's what this will be able to do. This will connect them directly to the citizens out on the street.
So, Dean, I gotta say, I actually am, that's a very promising idea. I really think it is. And here's the reason why, is that I routinely call the non-emergency number. And I actually disagree with you. I think it's terrible that I don't get a voice at the first time. I have to work my way through the system to do something where I want kind of a quicker response. It's not that slow, but I really like the other way. But I'm old, not as old as some other people around here, though.
Ooh.
But getting to my point is that in my world as a property manager, there's nothing more enjoyable than being able to send something to the right person right away, right? So, and that's what I really like about this, being that I'm out in neighborhoods a lot, doing this, and just for my job, is that, and it allows me to actually tell my residents too, because I can't, as a property manager, can't be at my properties all the time. It gives them a sense of being resourceful and being able to be independent in communicating issues that I can't necessarily take care of in my job, and I think that creates a level of involvement from the community great more than what I can do it in my professional job. So, and I think that app can be very helpful to that. So I think that's a good component that you're suggesting.
Thank you.
How many other departments are using this, Chief?
We are on the cutting edge of it. They gave us a really, really good opportunity, and we're testing it right now for them. And I've been contacted by other departments who want to see how it's working, and they're going to be signing on probably in the coming year.
So help us understand again, why is it here and not just in the regular, it's $6,000?
It was just one of those things that it's not part of the base budget, and I think it's just pointing these things out and getting your support for them. And it's pretty straightforward. Matt asked the same question about the other one, but it's not a health and safety thing. It's not a direct health and safety thing, so we just put it here.
It is an enhancement to their current offering.
Yeah, and so I have no problem adding it. I just think it's appropriate to, based on the direction I gave staff, that this get out there.
Can I ask a question in terms of rolling this out? I looked back to when we did the body cameras, and the full cost of that was not apparent up front, or at least well read up front. $6,250, not a big number in the grand scheme of things. It's still, every dollar matters. Is that the really good rate to keep us for a little while, and then we're going to see a massive increase in year 2 or 3, or is this their relative going rate for this product?
It's my understanding that this is their going rate for the product. Now, if they do a massive increase on us, then we might be pulling back on it. I won't bring that to you as If they're gonna double it on us, we're gonna have a problem.
Appreciate that.
So is it like a system where they're gonna text you a picture, or a phone call, and then the officer
It actually-
will respond, or?
Pretty easy.
It's an app on your phone, on your smartphone. You hit the button, and it pops up, and you put all the pertinent information in there. You can take pictures, and it sends it directly to a server, and it goes to all of our MDCs. It goes to the officers' cell phones as well. It's monitored by supervisors and the district officers, and they're responsible driven by policy to respond to a particular call for service or a problem
situation is.
within their area, yeah.
So it's tied into your system.
Yeah.
Does that become a public record then?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Does it cut down on time for other reports or replace other reports since it's non-emergency? So maybe somebody might not necessarily make the distinction between whether they should make a emergency call versus a non-emergency.
Some items that we get are informational and not reportable.
Right.
So instead of us having to actually send a police officer to go get that information, which is taking an officer from
Right.
more, I don't want to say more important calls, but you get what I'm saying, more emergency type calls, it allows the citizens to directly communicate with us, and we're able to process that based upon the information. If it is something that requires a report, then the officer will be doing a report on
So
it.
it's kind of like the Crime Stoppers tip line?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
with some added features.
With some added features, where they can get pretty immediate response from the district officers.
Chief, what's the name of it again?
Relay.
Waterhawk.
Oh, that's
Scuba Steve.
Scuba Steve, yeah.
Oh, the
It's an easy
Relay
app to
neighborhood
use.
safety,
It's
okay.
very similar to the Connect Oshkosh in
Yes.
terms of, it's great.
Are they connectable, will they talk to each other? The Connect Oshkosh and the Relay?
No, no.
Just like Chief can talk to, but you call Crime Stoppers, that's a totally separate, they got all kinds of rules and regs and things on that too.
All right.
Any more questions on the police budget? We have a couple more budgets to work through. These are-
Downloaded the app, by the way.
These are generally flat budgets, specifically.
One last question. Are you trialing this right now? So, I mean, we can download it and we can use it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. We want you to. We want you to
Okay.
use it.
Beta, or is it?
Oh, no, it's out.
Okay.
And we have citizens that are using it.
Rolled out, wasn't it?
About a month and a half ago.
Yeah, I remember seeing Officer Man at the blood drive, and I think she
Yes.
was talking it up that day, so.
Yes, yep. And that's a free, they're letting us use it for free, because they want us to buy it. And we're getting brought into it here, use the application through February. That's why our cost is only $62.50, it's for 10 months for 2020. We move on to the animal control budget. This is, again, relatively flat. We have a 2.5% increase that we are working with them. I've got to renegotiate their contract, but that's simple increase. And if you've ever had experience running a shelter, which I had back in Virginia, this is cheap for us. It requires no people, it requires no facilities, it requires no equipment. We use the humane shelter to handle our animal complaints and housing of our animals as well from within the city. Then we have our auxiliary budget.
One quick question, you
Sure.
have a 2020 goal. We're on page 58, right?
Yep.
Is that what we were looking at? Animal care?
Animal care, yes.
Is you're on?
Yes.
You have a 2020 goal of hiring a veterinarian?
That's their goals.
Okay.
That's their goals. They provide, yeah, we're not, I have no employees associated with animal care.
Other than your canine officer, right?
Well, we do have a humane officer that we trained, and he works as our liaison with the Humane Society, and he'll conduct any animal complaints that we may have. But it's just a police officer who's had additional training. There's no separate position for that.
So there's classes in herding cats?
I'm sorry? Yes, there is.
I gotta go to that.
Yes.
I was hoping nobody would.
We have our auxiliary budget. There's just a slight increase in that. We transitioned to our we have a new chief of the auxiliary, Scott Footed. He's also my fleet and equipment manager. His dad's been a part of the department for a long, long time. A lot of history there, and we're really happy with the work that he's doing. And as many of you know, probably all of you know, without the auxiliary around, we would be hurting because of the hours that they provide to us free. And any opportunity I can get to build on that, I really want to do that. They provided 1,850 hours in special events over 2019, which is, if we equated that to a police officer's salary, it would be out of this world. Then we have our crossing guards. You'll see the simple increase in crossing guards really is just salary related, based upon increases that come along the way. We have 18 full-time crossing guards, 3 part-timers, and some fill-ins along the way. And it's a struggle for us to keep that staffing. Our crossing guards, as you see them, are generally retirees, and they are out there in the cold and the whatever heat we have, and the snow and the ice, keeping the kids safe. And we're really fortunate that we have them, but it is labor intensive to keep them employed. They don't last long.
Dean, is some of that budget subsidized by the school district?
For crossing guards, no.
No,
Nope.
okay, thank you.
None of it.
Okay.
Do any communities have school districts that for those costs? Do other communities do that? Or do school districts pay for?
You know, we started exploring that this year, looking for statute, because there was a belief that the municipalities are required to provide school crossing guards. We couldn't find that statute. There are communities that are contracting out school crossing guards. If you may have seen some stories last year. I want to say it was down in the Milwaukee area where they were contracting out school crossing guards, and that company folded up, so they had to scramble to provide crossing guard services. Many crossing guards services are provided by the municipality through the police department across the state, but there is no statute that we could find that required us to provide school crossing guards. By ordinance, if I remember correctly, by ordinance and resolution, council can have the school district provide crossing guards, or council can provide crossing guards. There's 2 different ways to get it done.
Push comes to shove.
Well, on that front, we'll take a little step back, but on that front, since you're talking about schools and the impact, Mr. Roloff and I, we had a brief comments during some of our previous discussions, but what's the fiscal and budget impact of the school police liaison officers in terms of impact to our budget and costs that we incur to put officers in the schools?
We currently provide 5 school resource officers to the school district. The school district pays half of 4 of those for 9 months, and they pay 100% of the overtime. In 2018, our cost was $381,000 to the city. The school district reimbursed back approximately $220,000. That was with the 50% reimbursement of 4, as well as overtime. That was 100% reimbursement. And this year, our cost will be about $382,000, and the school district will reimburse back about $150,000, as well as another $24,000 in overtime. We pay the full freight for one of our SROs.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, the program you have at the Boys and Girls Club, they don't help pay for that, do they?
No.
Okay.
No, that's our Step Up program.
Right.
Where we go and do mentoring. We do some, probably 3 or 4 times a week. We'll have one of our detectives, as well as some of our officers, will go in there and work with the Boys and Girls Club and with those kids to try to help them learn how to be good citizens. And we're actually looking in 2020 to do my youth public safety camp that I've been trying to get accomplished since I've been here. I believe I'm gonna have funding through donations to do that. I've got two of my officers who have come to me and asked, two of my SROs, if they could put that program together. It's, will involve those kids who are, it's a mixture of kids who are high-performing kids in the school district, and then we're gonna be adding in some kids from the Boys and Girls Club who we believe that are gonna be influenced one way or another. We want to put a positive influence on them by working with the Boys and Girls Club. They'll help us identify those kids who we think that we can have an impact with, and we'll blend those kids with the high-performing kids from the school district, and hopefully at the end of this program, have an impact on all those kids. Any more questions?
I think we covered everything, Chief.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for preparation.
So, question for the group, do you want to take a break, or do you want to go straight in and finish up?
We got city council and, council's budget
Yes,
is, yeah.
council and-
We do, it's both.
Let's
Council
keep
budget.
going.
Yeah, let's just.
They're relatively, they're under general government. Might as well do council, it's the first page on page 16, inside the governmental tab. Consistent with the pay schedule for council, the pay is static, 36.5.
What page are we on?
We're starting on page 16, and so the total budget is going up about $2,300 total. The 2019 projected budget,
General government?
first, yeah,
There you go.
first tab. The only increase is a little bit for conferences and training, just anticipating, as those costs go up. And then you're projected to go over budget a little bit, and that's because of some of the tablets that were purchased towards year end, and then the rest of the council members who are actually scheduled for replacement, those of you who haven't had yours replaced, they are scheduled in the IT budget already. These were replacements in advance of the IT budget, so that'll be taken care of. So really, that's it on the budget with the council. The mayor did ask for an enhancement that's on the enhancement page, but that's pretty much it on your base budget.
Before we go to enhancement, so 6458. 2017, we did $2,800 in conference and training, and that's, to attend a conference and the mileage to get there, basically, in a nutshell. 2018, $2,100. 2019, I don't remember what the impetus was behind doubling it to $4,500. Do you remember that? I don't remember that conversation, why it was doubled.
I think it was in anticipation of continued, because for a couple of years, we had 5 council members, as many as 5 council members going to the league conference. This year, only the mayor went, but we've had the potential for that, so I think we wanted to cover that. The year-end estimate is probably a little high. Diane was concerned because of the equipment, so I think we're gonna be a $1,000 or $2,000 actually under that, so we'll probably be close to being on budget on this account when all is said and done. But the idea is that if council wanted to go to a league conference, either for new council members or the annual conference or something like that, or that also includes if you were to say, go to Madison to testify or go to something like
Like
that.
November 6th is lobby day, if anybody was going down, and
That would be an example of it as well. I mean, we try to encourage council members to go, but your schedules are what they are, that you may or may not be able to go, but we want you to have the capability of going if you choose to.
I guess to Matt's point,
Yeah.
we more than doubled from 2018 to 2020. I mean,
Part of that is the projections are based in August before registration for the league conference, which is your main event that you attend, that council members have attended. So we kind of assumed projection to be what was allotted for 2019.
I think it's
I'd like to
probably.
assume that lower, that's what I'd like to see.
Well,
Yeah, but at the time, we didn't know.
Yeah,
but the other thing too that I can say is over the years, getting a hotel room in Stevens Point was much different than getting a hotel room in Madison or
Milwaukee.
or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Where the costs at times have been double, and then dependence or
Don't we pay
depending.
that ourselves?
No,
No, that's covered.
that's covered, it's
One of the
If you
reimbursed.
go to conference, yeah.
Same thing, if you take your vehicle, you get reimbursed for mileage. I don't have a problem with 5,000, it just, the bottom line is that I want to make sure that if any council member wants to go to a conference, that there's money available to go.
I don't know if we should be using city money to be going to conferences.
Well, if it's part of our job,
well, I guess I would,
going to a league conference or
To a
going to
fair
lobby day
extent,
in
I wouldn't
Madison,
be able
to a
those are things
They're like
that are,
$500 registration fees.
well,
I
that's
can't
it,
do that.
they're part of our job, we belong to League of Municipalities as a city, and council members, I'm actually on
I'm
their
just
lobby team.
opposed to it.
I
I
know,
mean,
I'm on their lobby
yeah.
team, and I haven't gone the last couple of years to conference, just because it didn't work into my schedule, but I've gone to Madison for lobby day, I don't think I'm gonna go this year, at least right now, I haven't planned on going. But I think there's benefit to that. We were, this council, not this council, but previous councils had no interaction with the League of Municipalities. And I think that hurt us over the years. Because the league lobbies for, and you've gotten stuff on your tablet now sent from Diana and stuff, that lobby for bills and things that have a direct impact to us and gives us more information to be able to talk to, Gordon Hintz, to Tom Schrei, to Dan Fine. So I think it's, it's up to the individual council members to how active they want to get involved with the league. I think over the years, since I've been on council, there's been quite a few of us that have stayed active with the league just because we do see a benefit to the city. We do have a voice. We're the 6th largest city in the state. We should have a presence.
to your point about that every council member should have the opportunity, I don't disagree with that at all, 100% agree. However, in that budget line, it's only being used very narrowly. For example, did a budget look back on that budget line item, and only our current mayor as well as the previous mayor have only ever used it, not ever, have only used it in 2019, marginally in 2018. So to have everyone have access to that budget, right now if we have a budget out there and it's absorbed by 1 or 2 people going to a full conference and then the other ones can't use it, that's a problem, because it should be there for all to use, not
Correct.
just 1 or 2 who go to a couple larger ones, more expensive ones that drive up the cost. And
Well, I don't think there's any
Council
need
members
for
have
us to
been
go out of
encouraged.
state for any conferences at all. But in-state and dealing with the League of Municipalities, I think that or if there's some associated type thing, but yeah, I don't think we need to be traveling out of state and going to other.
If we all would want to go, it could be like the mayor's always going, and it could be a rotational based on seniority. Starting.
Well, it's always
rest of the night.
encouraged that council members participate in the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Conference, whether you choose to do that one or something else. And like when, in years past, Councilmember Osby and
I've gone.
Councilmember and Herman, and we've split up going to which session so that it was, maximized, and there've been some benefits, but not everybody goes every year.
Right.
I don't think we've specified which one
No, in
that
fact,
can be used for.
in
It's
fact,
up
I-
to your discretion.
I remember there was a year that there was a suggestion to cut it, and it was about 4,000 at the time, and I encouraged council to maintain that budget. And as time went on, more council members began to start going. And I remember one year, we had the best turnout of any city in the state. We had 5 council members go, and there was like, what session are you going to, type of thing. Jennifer checked, and we've only spent a little over 1,100 in this account. So even with the league conference, it's not going to exceed, or even if you added lobby day, you're probably looking at 2,000. So as Russ said, we were just being conservative with that. But I mean, that is, we'll still be close to being on budget because of the tablets. So we're okay, but we're only going to spend about $2,000 this year, and some of that included Mayor Cummings before Mayor Palmieri. So that wasn't all.
Nope.
All the 7 or 6 and 1.
I guess I don't care who's using it. I could care less about that. I just don't feel going to a conference should be picked up by the taxpayers. That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm in the minority, and I'll leave it at that.
Definitely talk to the county then. The county premiums everything, and we don't.
Correct.
Yeah. But I think what Matt, I think, is trying to say is just making sure that there's enough in the budget for everybody to use if.
If they choose to.
Yeah, if they choose to.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
That is a fair summation, yes.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
So then
I
that
would
really
like to see the 5,000
require
lower.
us to do some coordination and communication and planning, right, as to if
Well,
there
I
are some
think
different
if-
ones that people want to go to.
Well, I think that, you know, if all of a sudden, just out of the clear blue, somebody wants to go to something, depending what it is, yeah, I think there should be a little bit of a council approval to attend, because what's the benefit? You know, that's all, you know, I used to go to quite a few conferences and trainings at the sheriff's office because of my position, and I had to justify them sending me to those conferences, and what was I gonna bring back to the table? You know, that I just think that when you got a small budget and there's more than one or two people involved in spending that small budget, yeah, I think it should make sense to, you know, at least mention it, and probably ain't gonna make a big deal, but I just think it, not just pick up and go, and you find
just
out
did-
2 months later that somebody went to a conference and, oh, I wanna go to something that I thought's important.
I just.
And there's no budget dollars
Since
to
it's a
support
small
it.
budget, I saw one, you know, I mean, we're basically doubling it from, more than doubling it from 2018, so that's what I saw.
Well, our miscellaneous contractual, or, excuse me, our membership dues are going up quite a bit too. Now, I know that part of that is is that the chamber membership in there?
Chamber memberships in there.
Our league membership?
I think the increase was just a projection that in the event the league dues changed, I don't think they have, but that was just a precaution in the event they did.
And the council kind of got stuck with that league membership just because it was,
It's primarily offered to,
We decide if we're gonna be members or not, so it should be our budget line.
yeah, that's.
but the
That's a
benefit
good
of the
reason.
insurance and all of that, it's,
Oh, the insurance is separate from this. It makes us eligible for insurance, but you could drop out of the league insurance at any time.
Well, personally, I'd like.
If I could just chime in one quick comment.
You can.
Because I've seen experiences with multiple communities, and my only word of advice is, you know, the league and even some of their other workshops that they have for elected officials is pretty valuable. It's a way of you finding out about things that are impacting city government. And, you know, if you look at it from $5,000, yes, it's $5,000 over 7 people. It's really not that much. And whether you want to take advantage of that reimbursement or not, some people can't. And I think
I agree with that.
And I think, you know, I would just strongly encourage you to participate in the league, or even in the springtime, they have a training session for newly elected officials, but it's also good for officials that have been in office for a while, just to learn some of the government basics, things about finance, streets, and all the things we talked about during the budget session. But I found it pretty useful in encouraging other elected officials just to kind of get a good background about laws and ordinances and meetings and conducting yourself at meetings and those type of things.
I think the other thing too is, Mr. Fitzpatrick, and was it, I think our finance director at the time served on a panel, and it was in regards to like pay for performance and, you know, dealing with, you know, putting together an employee handbook and things like that. And it was amazing because we were the first community to do that, and there were no chairs left. There were literally people standing.
Naturally.
Literally.
Well, he's just saying that because I was in a competing session. You got more people than I did.
We did.
It's rubbed it in for years.
Yeah, we had a packed house, just saying. So, but
Well,
anyways.
I think I attended his, because I knew what they were gonna say. I didn't know what you were gonna say.
No, and I mean, to Russ's point, I can appreciate the value of the membership. I don't depreciate that at all. It is very valuable, and on the individual basis, it is valuable to attend those and to listen and to experience other people's experiences. It's invaluable. It's being good stewards of every dollar, and, 2,800, 2,100, we're gonna be more like 2,000 maybe. I don't see a need to increase that very much at all. If I'm in the minority, I'll shut up on it as well, but if there's some support,
You and I are, but-
I would have no problem reducing that line item to be more in line with, previous actual budget amounts. So take that for what you'd like,
That's
I
your
guess.
budget and
Yes,
that's your.
yes.
Well, we
Yep.
also have,
This is the first time you've had a chance to talk about it. I mean, it's,
Yep.
it's a 7-person budget, so.
I don't think anybody went with the extra city phone device. We passed over that. Nobody's getting phone reimbursement for whatever they use to communicate with folks. We may have another council or future council who wants to be attending more of those things, so not everybody has the luxury of just writing all of that off. I think it's fine the way it is. The fees have not gone down, they only continue to increase every year for those registrations and.
I'm fine leaving it where it is,
Yeah.
because you attend most of them, and you're getting further education, and it's giving more to the city. The more you're educated on the issues,
I
better.
have 3 to report on this week, but they weren't all on the city's dime.
And as long as they're not in like Las Vegas or LA or something,
Right.
I'm good with it. Otherwise, I'd want to go for sure.
Trust me, I don't leave town unless I absolutely have to these days.
Okay. Mayor, if you want to.
Speaking,
enhancement?
yeah, I guess, the question, that came up earlier this year was, whether or not we were members of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And, it was actually when city manager and I were at the Urban Alliance meeting in Racine? Yes.
Yeah, Racine.
And I wasn't really familiar with them until that time. I became aware that there are over $3 million in grants available to members. The typical membership rate is like $5,000, and we had the opportunity to have a 1-year half off that membership since we hadn't been members. And so I just wanted to put it to council to see if you're interested. A number of the grant categories, they're not taking 2019, this would be for 2020. Some are related to neighborhood stabilization. There are different categories based on the size of the city, of course, in those awards. Livability, mayor's climate things. I think some of you may have received a letter from, or two, from a couple of citizens who are interested in us being part of the mayor's climate. So if you think it's worth putting $2,500 out there for us to be part of that in order to have access to those grants, I believe there are a few hundred members that the numbers are a little better in terms of odds and competition for those grants. So it's just an opportunity. Not that the opportunity goes away, but it was negotiated for a 1-year half off that membership.
So and this is for,
U.S. Conference of Mayors.
I think we've gone to it last.
No, that's why they were gonna give us that off deal.
Where are their meetings?
That was a separate, there is a conference available, an annual conference. I would agree to absorb my travel costs on that, so that we could have access to the membership, since it's not something that all council members would have access to, but we as a city would have access to those grant applications.
So, I mean, the bottom line is, do we get a chance of getting some
Yeah,
grants? I
yeah.
mean, that's.
Right.
And who's gonna write
the?
who's gonna write the grants? We're gonna have to have city
There-
staff write the grants. Because they gotta do the research, they gotta do all the, you gotta have statistics to go with grants. You can't just,
My question
Put
would
your
be
name in and-
too
Yeah.
is, when I looked at who the current members are, they're typically mayoral forms of government. What are the chances of a city manager form of government getting a grant when the membership is, from what I could tell, mostly mayoral form? I mean, I don't
I
know.
mean, it's a good,
That's what I'm
it's a
asking.
good question. I don't know that the criteria slice and dice it in that way.
The awards of grants go based on the size of the cities.
Exactly.
So, I
There's
mean,
like different tiers.
Do we know how many members are in our city tier? Because maybe we'd be one of the few, and we could get multiples, or we might not have a chance at all.
So just for example, a medium city, which we're over 30,000, there was $150,000 in neighborhood stabilization. The total there was 3 million on neighborhood stabilization. Wells Fargo was the entity putting that out. So there were like 2 metropolitan cities in the higher category that got 300,000. So they, they're broken down, and then, Walmart had a $25,000 for a first place and a $15,000 for a second place, and those were broken down by large and small city.
How many cities are included in this?
Roughly 1,400. Childhood obesity, 400,000.
Maybe a
Some of
health
these things,
department issue.
leadership in the arts, dollar-wise innovation. So it's not that we wouldn't have access to other grants of that sort, not being members, but this is just a more exclusive, smaller pool for those specific grants. It's not gonna hurt my feelings either way. Just wanted to bring that to your attention if you'd like to.
Have you had a chance to talk to these other people and say, hey, we've been getting
So
grants and
Corey
things?
Mason is the mayor of Racine, and he actually recommended it when we were at Urban Alliance. He had the opportunity to do some training and conference with them, and actually, there's also other resource information available to us that you don't need to pay for out there on different topics and issues that sometimes we go to the league for. For example, the gun violence safety, some of that sign-on language, and other issues. So there's lots of information you don't pay for, you don't need the membership for. That just adds another dimension. I'm not trying to sway you either way, but I want to present it as an opportunity.
I think I got a couple thoughts on this one. And one I discussed with the mayor over the phone a little bit ago. It was a little bit concerning in terms of we hadn't even had, it was the day we received the actual budget book. We received in that same packet a letter from 2 members of our community advocating for our support to go into this U.S. Conference of Mayors. So people in the community knew about the request before the people sitting at this table, and that's a concern for me. That's a big concern for me. 2, it is a very partisan group.
No, it's nonpartisan.
It absolutely is a very partisan group, because if you go onto their leadership board, it absolutely tells you if they're Republican or a Democrat right there in bold print. So I have a concern putting us as a nonpartisan group into a very partisan entity. And if they weren't, they would not list in blue and red who's running their organization in that given cycle. So I have a very big concern of going into a very partisan group, pushing an agenda one way or the other from the top down. That's a big concern for me at this local level of government, where we are not partisan, as we should not be. And then 2, we are not the mayor council of government. We are a manager council of government, and it just does not fit with our structure, and I can't support that. On all 3 of those fronts is what drives me to that path.
Can I ask you a question based off what he's saying?
Let me-
So if we got a grant, does it matter what side of the aisle you're on? It's helping the community.
No, there's some misinformation. I think that if you look at the organization and do a little more reading, you'll see that that's not quite the case. And I understand they may list somebody's affiliations, but I want to address the first thing, and that is, if you have a constituent who asks you for action, and it's your responsibility to bring that forward, it's not a matter of something in a negative for, I believe that it was 2 individuals who had asked about whether we were part of the mayor's climate agreement protection, and I think I had shared with you how that came
Yep.
down. So to have this being construed as somehow not fair because council didn't know about it. Many of you have conversations with constituents where they're asking you to bring issues forward. So that was completely appropriate. And if they would like to suggest that we are part of, we've had citizens come and speak to us at the dais asking us to do things. So I'm not quite sure why it's being characterized as a negative. But in any event, that's, you know, certainly a perspective.
I know less than nothing of this, but the only problem I have is the money end of it. You know, we've got this, you know, we've got our conference and training budget doubling in 2 years, or more than doubling in 2 years, and then now we want to throw this mayor thing in there. I guess if we could get more information, that's fine, but I'd like to hold off for a year on it, you know, and I would like some more information, so that's all. That's my personal thing.
Well,
None of the other
this
stuff
would be
bothers
for
me, so.
2020, so I think there's time to certainly bring more information.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents.
Awkward transition. We'll just go to city manager's budget. City's manager's budget's on page 19. Slight increase on wages. There's nothing in the budget regarding my compensation for next year. Any changes? There is that account in unclassified, whatever council chooses to do ultimately. We'll get charged to this account, but it's budgeted over there. That's why this budget actually is over, because we typically don't budget my raise. That would be inappropriate for me to be presumptuous on that part. So it's somewhere else in the budget, but it's there for you. There are some other minor changes. I think all the there's a slight increase in other materials and supplies, and I think that goes up and down as the year goes on. So, but pretty much consistent with my contract and just office supplies and training and whatnot. So happy to answer any questions that you might have about my budget.
Is the bulk of the increase, health insurance went down?
It's a 2-person budget.
Oh,
So,
okay, all
So Diane's, any adjustments
Okay,
for
gotcha.
my administrative assistant.
Gotcha.
And then here's a good example of, you know, with health going down because it's a 2-person budget, it gets pretty isolated there, you can see.
Right.
You can see that there.
What, just curiosity more than anything, what contractual services would your office have?
That is my phone.
Oh, okay.
That's considered my phone reimbursement.
Okay, that's fine.
And yes, you're being presumptuous on a raise because we were talking about cutting your salary.
Increasing Diane's. Right?
Yeah. Diane's gonna have a real good year.
There's no provision for a cut, if that's what you're asking.
We're gonna move things around. Get the real person that works in that office.
I just feel like Roger Dangerfield right now. I'm just getting ready to adjust my tie. But that's all I have. Russ, is there anything else in terms of any other budgets? Or it's probably a matter of, you know, where we go from this standpoint?
Yeah, I guess years past, I'll just throw this out there. You know, we got the enhancements, and obviously it's rather high, 944 plus. I don't think we can obviously do them all, but how do you want to proceed? I guess is my question. If there's some that we have a consensus that we want to approve, how's that going to affect the levy? And you know, that spreadsheet you usually get, if you add this, it's going to go up to this. If you add this, it's going to go. If you don't add this, it'll be here. You know, so that we have, because you did tell us at the very beginning, and I think Russ did too, that there is some room.
Right.
You know,
The room on the expenditure restraint side is such that, and this is just my observation with you, it's really gonna come down more to what your tolerance and acceptance is of changing the tax rate. For the most part, you'll be under the expenditure restraint limit, because I suspect that your tolerance to go any higher on the levy is gonna be limited. And you won't hit, there's probably about 700,000+ in expenditure restraint capacity. I think I heard council members say yesterday, we wanna make sure that we take full advantage of it, even if we just put it in contingency and we do some other things that Russ is recommending. But we wanna maximize our expenditure restraint cap, because we wanna make sure that we don't tie our hands for subsequent fiscal years. And I think that's why Russ wants to come back and make some suggestions on 2019. He thinks I tease him, it's sort of like H&R Block will look at your taxes, from last year a second time. He's taken a second look at our expenditure restraints, saying, hey, based on my experience, here are a couple little things we can do to maximize our expenditure restraint cap, which I think is appropriate. And I'm certainly open to hear what Russ has to say on that.
Yeah, not only the expenditure restraint review, but I certainly heard the message yesterday. I did find the spreadsheet that was used in the past to kind of measure this, because not all of these budget amendments are going to impact the general fund. Okay. So what I'd like to do between now and the public hearing is get you that information that shows what the levy impact is of each one of these. And I know in the past, in talking to the city manager Roloff, that you kind of took care of this at the budget adoption time. Mm-hmm. My thought process and suggestion is maybe I can present this the night of the public hearing, and at the public hearing we could have some additional discussion about yes or no on these enhancements. Or if you have any other thoughts, I would prefer to get that the evening of the public hearing, so that the night of the adoption we know what's in and what's out, and there's no last minute calculations.
I think we did that
Well,
last
what
couple
we
years,
did
that was-
last year also was, had an Excel
Yes, that's what I'm
spreadsheet
referring to.
that we could put in what our
Thoughts are-
enhancements
Right.
or changes or whatever, and then it was identified in that spreadsheet, and then those manipulations could take place.
Correct, that's what I was trying to say, maybe
But
not
it was,
those
I
words.
want to get it to her, what was it, the week?
Week before, I think.
Generally, I think we gave it to her this Friday, and
Yeah.
then we would give it to her next Friday again, basically, or
Well,
things like that, where things were updating as
I
it
know
went.
Councilmember Peschel's not here now, but I guess, are there any that of the enhancements that we have a consensus we would support?
Well, Mr. Peschel indicated the transit, which is why I made the suggestion. I don't think you need to worry about whatever you choose ultimately to do with transit, with students. We'll take care of it within budget if we have to use,
A placeholder.
Yes.
if we have to use fund balance for the first year, that's not
Doesn't
at
show
the
up
end
on
of
the
the
radar.
world. Yeah, so I think you can do that. But these
But
other
when do
ones,
but when do we make that decision? Not during the budget cycle?
I think you can avoid having to do it during the budget cycle.
Okay.
Part of me says, you still have to work this out with the school district. To say, oh, let's budget for it, is kind of just,
And that private entity for the other third.
yeah, where's the
Because you don't
private
even know
entity?
if that's, the
Right.
private side could say, no, we're not interested.
Nobody comes forward.
Nobody comes forward, and then what do you do?
And I think what I would like to see, though, is comprehensively over all departments, how are we currently serving, our contribution to help serving the school district and
Yes.
the youth, whether it's the crossing guards, whether it's the
PSOs.
the PSO, how many,
Museum.
like those different things, just out of curiosity, for the taxpayer, what are we currently already doing to support them? Because I think, there was a comment made of what skin do we have in the game, and I think it wasn't, I don't think meant to be derogatory, but I think it was a true lack of knowledge of what actual taxpayer dollars are already going. So I think, education, knowledge is always power, as I say. And I think then if there's gonna be an actual proposal by a member or two of the council, what is it? Is it free transportation? Is it discounted transportation? But I think to be in this waffling of whatever, I don't think it's fair to us to make a decision. And I don't think it's fair to the community, because again, we never want to put the community in a situation where they think there's going to be something, which there's not going to be a charge, and then there ends up being a charge, and it just creates to the chaos.
To your point, I think as the one who put it on the table too, until it shows up on a Tuesday night's agenda, it's not there. I think it's very fair, and that's coming from me who put it on the table. It's not there yet. So you can't consider it tonight, and you can't consider it as part of this budget yet, because we haven't done enough work to get it there yet.
There's the old civics lesson, there's appropriations, which right now you're talking about appropriation, and there's authorization, but the council has not authorized it yet, and until they do, you can't appropriate it. But you have to get them in sync at some point. If you authorize something, you gotta make sure you have the appropriation for it, and vice versa. But I think getting the authorization is probably the appropriate first step, especially if we still need to find out if private funds are gonna throw some money in at this, and what additional we might throw at it.
Well, I think the other thing too is today was a prime example of listening to one of our departments, in which, they have, had some challenges over the year trying to fund programs, but through, a private entity within the community in which is supported, they raise tens of thousands of dollars, to the tune of actually more than what we're even talking about. And that didn't need to be subsidized by the taxpayer. It was community involvement, community engagement, and I'm talking about the Food Truck Fridays. How amazing. And that's where I have a lot of confidence in this community, I think with our help and our support, in making sure, but I think there are things, programs like that, but I think the school district could, perhaps maybe come up with some ideas, or their PTO, or I think things like that. And then I think if there's participation, then I still feel it's up to them to let us know what they may need. If we're gonna pursue it, then, depending on if it's free or discounted, then I think we also need to take a look at how can we support our seniors 65 and above that have significant issues with transportation.
If I can take some liberties with what I heard and observed over the last 2 days, with the enhancement page, Russ is gonna put together the model that Steve referred to, that you have, here's what the levy impact's gonna be, here's what the rate impact's gonna be, and I think that's, and then kind of a running total, what is the rate up to? What is the rate increase up to? And I've worked with you long enough. I don't know exactly what the number is, but I know that you're gonna reach a point where you're like, I'm full, I'm done, I will not do any more. Everybody will be a little different, but you're all gonna feel that level of discomfort will start to build on you, and at some point, you're gonna say, okay, we're done. What I'd like to do is, what I heard, a couple comments were some of these, why is this even an enhancement? Specifically, the preventive maintenance and fire, and the app for police. Unless I hear something, I think what I'll do is just assume that those are in. The two easiest that are in are the two at the very end. The income continuation insurance is a savings of $39,000 for the general fund. I assume that you're okay with that, cutting that.
Yes, please.
And then the 28.4 for the other funds for everybody else with ICI. So we can put those in, and then I would suggest putting those two in. The other ones, I think that you still need to discuss that, and I think what Russ suggested is, on next Wednesday, give us an idea of where you're kind of leaning. I heard some suggestions with fire, do you implement it for a partial year? I'd like feedback from you on that. I sensed a little bit of that, but I didn't hear 4, but I heard a couple-ish, 3-ish.
I like the idea of a partial year.
I like the idea of a partial year as well.
Absolutely.
I know we're feeling it, just as a reminder, you're all smart enough, you've been here long enough, except for Mr. Miller, he's been here a short time.
Any short time too.
But remember, partial year this year means massive year next year. We're feeling that now with the addition to the police department specifically, in that partial year employee additions that they had. It has a big impact, and so that will have that impact next year will be fully felt and appreciated.
But there could be some cost savings in the fire department with retirements, right? Because those are usually higher salary
Yes.
Those are.
firefighters
that's
versus
always the
entry
case.
level?
In fact, I think I had mentioned yesterday, typically I authorize the fire department to overfill. Technically, by the time they're out of the training, the vacancies are there, and then the vacancies increase even more as the year goes on.
Right.
Both chiefs looked at me a little askance with the salary savings line item. The salary savings line item is a negative one. And even the council a couple of years ago, so, Bill, Matt, and Jake probably, and Lori probably don't have any responsibility for this, but remember, it was like, oh, I don't know, and the chiefs were uncertain about it. And I just looked at them and said, see, guys, they're big departments, and they, because of that turnover, yeah, they do a little overtime, but they also just, they manage and float those positions.
Well, as they said, it takes a good 6 months to a year to hire somebody,
Go through the process.
Yeah.
to go through the process.
Because even if we authorize it now, it'd be July
And
before they
sometimes
can.
you can't fill every shift, so you just do without some folks. And that, I know that that's the nature of the beast. I've seen it for 30-plus years. Russ, vacancies, they always happen. So I felt comfortable, and sure enough, they're gonna be under budget with that negative on their budget. So they're okay. So, yeah, there will be turnover. And these folks are low-end, these firefighters are
The entry level.
the entry level. Thank you, yeah. And now they accelerate.
5 years, did 5 years to get to scale?
Oh, in fire, it's 18 months, isn't it, Fitz?
It was just changed, so don't quote me on that. I can check it.
It's more rapid than 5, though. It's just the nature of that beast. And that's why you see some of those increases on the personnel. It's like, what raise did they get? It's just that they went down, so we get a reduction in the budget, and then we slowly ramp it up.
Sheriff's office is 3.5 years. I
Yeah,
think OPD's right in that range too, right? 3.5 probably for OPD.
I think it's in that
Let's see.
ballpark.
I'm checking right now.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, to that point, it
But,
starts
that
slow,
being
but
said-
but it accelerates. So I think somebody had said, you're gonna have to eat the whole for however many you add for a full year, plus they'll get their 6-month bump, then they'll get their 12-month bump, and that is the nature of that beast. So, I mean, the other ones, I think you need to think through. There's some tough decisions here. Oh, I would also suggest maybe the museum, if it's neutral, I don't want to be over optimistic about the revenues. This is not the same Titanic exhibit that was a smash success in 2006. It was an incredibly popular.
Well, it was so close to the movie being out too, I mean.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah,
And they have the
But-
same exhibit in Milwaukee. It was packed there. A smaller, but the same exhibit here, packed here. So this one, I think, will be a little narrower appeal. So I don't want to go too far, but I think you can count on 18,000.
Well, I also personally think the assistant director, 99% of that salary is being covered by the grant.
Yeah.
So all we're paying for is to bump the person up from just a curator to a curator assistant director. I think that's important. They have that chain of command, and it almost sounds like that could
The
be
succession planning.
a succession planning a little bit, yeah.
10, 11, and 12 are a yes for me as a collective group. I don't know if there's foreheads nodding on that one, but
I could support that.
10, 11, and 12 could be slid in. You've got 4 at least that are okay with that at the moment. That's a small
Mr.
ask.
Fitzpatrick just gave me the high sign.
Yep.
That
Go to
Councilmember Miller said 5 years is correct.
XI.
18 months to 5 years, yeah.
Okay. These are extra part-time staff for their,
You should have a
their exhibit
laptop.
that they're
It's a little
anticipating.
bit easier than your phone.
Yeah.
Especially as the older he gets.
I need a bigger
Just around
screen.
that time.
I'm not as good as Fitz. You need at
Literally
least as
just to
big
keep the
as
doors open
Jennifer's,
while the
right?
exhibit's
Okay,
there.
so those are the ones that I felt there was some general consensus. The other ones, I'm gonna need some direction from you on, but you're already gonna be, I think you wanna see what you've spent now. Because what's the rate gonna be now? Because it's only a 2.7 as of yesterday morning. As of this afternoon, it's something different. We need to tell you what that is.
Can we just, while you're talking about that, maybe Mr. Van Gompel can help us on this. The water utilities, 13, 14, 15, was that going to be covered under the utilities cost? And that would increase the utilities debt, probably? Or
It
how,
would increase your costs that'll have to be offset by user fees down the line.
But I want to remind everybody that that admin job is going to pay for itself and some
Right.
more because we get rid of the contractor. So
Right.
on the water utility, I'm okay with the additional person, the administration person. I'm not okay with the supervisor. So, you
so
know,
you're talking operator, like the operator one guy?
the operator one guy.
Assistant.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
That seems like a must, almost.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
almost seems like,
If
Yep.
you have not taken
That's a
walkthrough-
terrible schedule,
If
yeah.
you have not taken a walk through any of the public works
Right.
plants, this is not just for you, but
Right.
everyone. It's eye-opening as to how minimal those facilities operate, as well as,
oh, yeah.
and I'm not a doomsday prepper, or anything along the lines of a pessimistic, on that front. However, worst case scenario hits that plant, and it's literally things are hitting the fan. We're talking, water is
Oh, yeah.
the number one thing that this community needs, and if they don't have it flowing, things in this community turn to crap pretty
I
Real-
think
real
everybody
quick.
worries that we don't want to be a Flint.
Yeah.
And we talk about that
just getting
all the
water
time.
in the pipe,
Yeah.
let alone
One of the-
operating the plant is a massive health and safety. It's number one in this community.
And one of the mini conferences, which was through the responsibility of East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commissioner, not on the dime here, but that was on resiliency and the ability of communities. It was like a half-day thing Friday, and there was a lot of turnout for that because so many of our fellow communities are seeing more difficulties recovering, because that resiliency relates to that ability to quickly recover after responding to these unplanned events. And the numbers that were in their KPIs were the number of hours, especially as wet as the year was, for us to return to norm, whatever our norm is, right? So, I mean, any investments we make here for the ability to recover from one of those unexpected events sooner can pay for itself in the pre-planning.
Well, and the DNR and their restrictions that are coming, I mean, this is a must to fund.
Yeah.
I mean, in replacing that consultant. So like I said, I'm okay with that operator one. The administration position, I'm okay with. I'm not, the supervisor we're gonna push off in my mind. I guess I wanna just, does everybody agree on that?
Right.
Russ?
The only additional comment, and I have no problem at all with number 14, I would offer a suggestion or a word of caution on number 15. We are seriously exploring the technology of getting that customer interface set up, and that also has a module that helps with the meter replacement, which is part of the justification for 15. I would urge maybe some caution and maybe even a wait to see once how the technology impacts the workflow before you make a commitment on 15. That is my advice as a finance director.
Fair point of advice, and I appreciate that a lot. When would we then expect to be able to make an informed decision using that basis?
We plan on getting the technology in front of the city council in November. And that would include this additional module that would handle the meter replacements. I would say at least into the first 6 months of 2020 before you make that decision. That decision point is not as critical today because, again, it's not levy supported, it's user fee supported, and we'll also have the process of getting the rate application in. So I'm not that concerned. I mean, we could absorb that in mid-year a lot easier than we could on some of the levy-supported funding.
Would you prefer, if we wanted to, that we put it in as a contingency, like we did last year, as in, come back at this point and get approval, or that we just tell water to come back at this point for a request and approval, instead of putting it as a contingency?
From a financial standpoint, I would say, why don't you just take a hold on it for a year?
A year.
Let them bring 'em
Okay.
back.
All right. There you go. We got,
We're gonna be doing
I'm
budgets at this time, in July
Right.
next
Yes.
year, we'll be doing budget again.
okay.
That's
all right.
fair.
They'll know the answer.
Yeah.
Fair. I just wanted
So,
to.
no, and we appreciate the input.
That's
So,
what- yeah.
yeah, very much so.
And
Yeah. So then we're just down to the
I'm okay with
operator.
14.
Yep,
Number
I'm-
line
I'm
14.
good.
I had that checked off, it was
Okay.
near my
We
binder,
have
so yeah.
four
Okay.
Glad you guys-
shaking.
All right, enough head shaking, yes, 14?
Yes.
Yep.
I missed totally, and I apologize, but was there a big sell to get those park maintenance guys? Do they need them?
They need them bad.
Yeah.
They need them
Yes.
bad.
There's
I
a fair
can tell you,
amount
if
of-
Bob
I
was
mean,
here.
I know from
Unfunded-
the county
unfunded
side, the
man-
county's
unfunded
going for
mandates.
3 full-time parks caretakers because we
Yeah.
don't have enough staff.
I
And
can
work-
tell you, I can tell you, sitting on that board for going on 8 years.
I was on it
it's
for
just-
4 years, yeah.
But when was the last time it's been 12 years since we added to that
Well,
staff?
a couple of years ago, he took away, and I didn't call him out, I didn't say anything, but he took away a few part-timers, because that was that inflection point of, it was getting difficult to get good qualified part-timers during the summer. And so he made that management decision to get rid of
traded.
3 part-timers, if I remember right, for
one
one
full-time.
full-time.
Yes, he did, you were
Yep,
correct.
and we've also, we're experiencing a part-time shortage everywhere, not just city staff, but he has a large unfunded mandate, and a large unfunded requirement for the amount of stuff that we continue to approve and put on the parks.
Well,
plate.
they're adding 70 acres just for
It's really-
Lakeshore Park.
And
I
I
call it
pointed it out.
workload creep.
Yeah, but just all the
Workload
economic
is-
development that we can, that we are achieving and
So,
receiving.
so there, from listening, I respect all of your opinions. You feel we should go ahead with that? That's 132,000.
Don't we
What-
kind of got to see the number that we have available before we start
Yeah,
saying yes to almost
I think we
everything?
should, but let me just add this as additional food for thought on number 9 with the Parks Department. I have a suggestion that would not impact the tax levy on that. We talked about it, and maybe it kind of got glossed over, but my recommendation is that those expenditures be placed in that Parks Special Revenue Fund. And we have, I've developed kind of a long-range plan so that we don't have an impact on the expenditure restraint and the levy by moving gradually, fully funding that over a period of time. In 2020, the recommendation is for 50,000. 2021, that would be elevated probably to about 100,000. So that we get to fully funding this and some of the other operational costs. So you could add that enhancement and not impact the tax levy.
Okay,
I enjoy that.
yep. Again,
That's enjoyable.
your expertise is greatly appreciated.
I want to make sure we aren't hurting ourselves. But
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And
Okay.
honestly, I mean, much of the things we added.
I don't have a better idea.
That's
So-
okay.
Much
Hey,
of the things
hey,
we've added.
by the way, I got competition.
If I can back up a second then, we agreed that the maintenance stuff for $24,000 to fire department needs to be done, and that probably is more of an operation side than an enhancement side.
Yeah, can we put that into operations from?
Does that
point
mean
going
we
forward?
then gotta hire that building maintenance custodian?
Well, that's another
Separate
issue.
things.
At this
That's a whole
point-
different issue, but
Well,
At
he
this
was
point,
mainly
I'd like
supposed
to-
to be like,
yeah,
that position or someone is somewhat designated to the fire department,
yeah.
out of
It's
facilities.
pretty much it's not going to be
Per se, fire department.
100% rock solid,
Right.
but it is for the fire department.
Because I don't think we can add that work, per se, with the staff we have now, right?
I didn't put the chief on the spot. I was going to put the chief on the spot because one of you asked, which priority order would you put
Right.
in? But I was going to say, but the building custodian is in the priority list too, because it really is for him. I mean.
But I mean, that's, if we're gonna give them 2 and 2, I mean, we can push the custodian back a year, I would think.
Yeah, well, what I'd like to do is have you look at Russ's sheet,
Okay,
because everything looks good on the menu right now, but you don't want to sit there and say, oh, I ordered too much.
Well, all right, so then let me back to number 2 then. If we don't fill that position, do we currently have staff that can do those fire department?
That number 2, that isn't a position, those are
No,
contracts.
those are things that need to be done, but are they all
not
contractual or are they all?
They're all contractual, every one of them.
that
Those are
answers
currently
this
not being done and have not been done.
Right.
And they should be done, they really should be.
But there was that discussion, and we moved the mechanic out of the fire department to central garage. Fire department wants the rest of the city basically to take on keeping their stations up to date and stuff, so
just preventative maintenance that should
So
have been
this
done
is
the whole
something to
time.
keep in mind in all of those proposals that come to us where, for example, in the TIFs, the staff memo says fiscal impact. There is fiscal impact on police and fire and these other things, the windshield time in that, which typically we have not seen specifics on that. And I think we have to look closer at that because maybe the chief doesn't think that one project is going to impact it that much. But when we look at 20 or 30 of them, collectively, it does.
Well, how many times does the police department drive out the Kpis way? Yeah, a transload facility. It's a pretty far stretch.
So as you're doing that, there was at least some discussion of partial for fire,
Yep.
at least in terms of when you're putting your spreadsheet together. Show us also, not that we can't do math, but show us the partial acceptance of that for 2020 in terms of if we accept this as of, an August 1st hire date. This is the fiscal impact of 2020.
We'll give you the running total of the dollar amount, which is there, but the dollar amount, the tax rate impact, the levy percentage impact, so you'll know it's going from 2.7% to X. I'm not even gonna guess at a number, but then you'll know. Every one of you will have a different tolerance level, but then collectively, you gotta have a tolerance level.
Bring Tums that night.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll get it at home, so you'll need
Oh, yeah.
the Tums at home. 'Cause you'll all respond differently before you respond collectively.
So, yeah, my goal will be to get you that revised spreadsheet with the packets this week. So we have the public hearing on Tuesday, you have the ability to make some decisions. Wednesday, I'm sorry, it got moved. No.
Make sure my calendar.
Just
Right.
Russ misspoke, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
You can come Tuesday if you want, and just, nobody will be here.
No, plan commission will be here.
I'll wait until
They don't wanna
Wednesday.
listen to you.
But, and then, hopefully we can.
Hold on, what day are we talking here?
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
November 6th.
Wednesday the 6th, the public hearing is immediately at 5 p.m.
Your calendar is right after the enhancements on page number.
And don't forget, we're going in closed session after that, too.
Yes.
So it's 5 PM on the
Yes.
6th?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You're gonna
And that's
be
gonna
right.
be a long night,
Yes.
right?
7:30 or 8 probably.
And you also have the remaining discussion with the CIP for streets and other projects, too.
Yeah. And the same will really apply for all the CIPs, what changes you'd like to make. I would,
So what's your deadline that you would like to see those from us leading up to that?
If you have other things you want me to, for the
So
board,
CIP,
yes.
well, I think we did 2 rounds. I think Friday morning,
this week?
yeah, that would be the first one, and we can decide based on how we do next week. Do you want to put another deadline in there for any other second or third thoughts?
And what do we say by cutting Fitzy?
A lot.
I wanna see the
Well, he's
numbers.
a jack of all trades. We haven't determined if he's a master of
Or
anything.
just emotional?
The cost to replace him will be incalculable.
Yeah.
We'll need to get an emotional support dog for him.
Oh,
I was
he's,
gonna say, actually,
he's crying back there.
that might be the emotional support pet
Yes.
for Mark.
Yeah, but he has a backup plan
I was
now.
gonna say, before this continues, I move to adjourn.
Well, we are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.